Chapter 11:11. He thought that he wouldn't have another chance if he missed it. He didn't expect that woman to chase after him like a dogskin plaster. Since that was the case, then don't blame June for being merciless. As for stalling for time, sorry, there was no need for that anymore. As long as he subdued this Soul Queen, not to mention any information related to the Soul Continent, controlling the entire world would not be a problem. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the desert, the wind howled. Jun Changshao stood proudly, already wearing the Azure Yang set. Warning! Warning! This was not a drill, nor was it any fantasy. It was a real battle. Rose Queen smiled and said, "Your equipment is quite good. As the saying goes, clothes make the man." In addition, Jun Changshao was handsome to begin with. With equipment similar to the Heavenly Strategy School uniform, he was so handsome that it shocked the world and made ghosts cry. "Cut the crap." Jun Changshao said indifferently, "Show me your weapon." Rose Queen shook her head and said, "This queen has always liked to be barehanded because it feels like punching the opponent's flesh." Clang! Jun Changshao drew his true Yang sword and said, "Then let's fight." Whoosh! Using his movement technique, he turned into a stream of light and rushed over. The first and second forms of the Ling Jian divine art were used together. First, he gathered the sword momentum in the sky, then slashed out densely packed sword energy. This was definitely the most serious battle Jun Changshao had ever fought since he broke through to Wusheng. Because if he didn't fight like this, he wouldn't be able to win. Rose Queen shook her head and said, "Your combat strength after recovery seems to be no different from before you were injured." Whoosh! 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 Bang! 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 Numerous jade-like hands appeared out of thin air, easily grabbing the incoming sword chi before crushing it into pieces. Ka. Jun Changshao still rushed over. Mechanical wings condensed behind him, and his right fist was armed with steel. In a normal battle, using the true Yang set and armed wings was already considered a trump card for him. However, it would be difficult for him to defeat Rose Queen, who was above Wusheng in the Great Perfection stage. Therefore, he had already grasped the talisman of heaven and earth in his hand. Jun Changshao didn't use it immediately. First, he used his current cultivation base to give the other party a false impression that his strength was only a so-so. Then, when the other party wasn't paying attention, he unleashed a ferocious attack. Boom! His plan was pretty good, but as soon as he got close, he was sent flying by the opponent's punches. He then struggled to stabilize himself in the air. Rose Queen shook her head. "Is this your true strength?" Originally, he thought that after his injuries were healed, he would give him a big surprise, but in the end, he was greatly disappointed. Damn it! Jun Changshao once again felt that he was being looked down upon, so he angrily gripped his sword with both hands. His body of holy flames erupted, and all kinds of flames gathered on his sword, forming a rainbow light. Rose Queen was surprised. "So you're a fire elementalist?" This could be considered a pleasant surprise. After all, there were very few martial artists in the Spiritus continent who cultivated both sword and fire. Swoosh! Whoosh! Jun Changshao once again displayed the linear sword technique. With the support of the fire element, the sword chi that burst out immediately carried scorching flames. Wherever it passed, scorching marks were left in the air. Rose Queen didn't dare to be careless. She used her graceful movement technique to shuttle between the sword and fire. If it were a man, the scene would definitely be unbearable. However, when performed by a peerless beauty, it was as if she was dancing under the special effects of reality and illusion. It was beautiful beyond compare. Swoosh! Swoosh! Jun Changshao didn't hold back and poured all the power of the sword and fire into the true Yang sword. He crazily displayed the Ling Jian God technique, and endless sword chi swept out like a rainstorm. Swish! Rose Queen dodged left and right. Her right hand drew an arc in the air, and a powerful psionic energy burst out across the air. Boom! Jun Changshao placed his sword in front of him in time to withstand the powerful bombardment. He immediately flew back like a cannonball. Too weak. On the way, Rose Queen appeared out of thin air. Her right hand once again condensed power and formed a palm print from top to bottom, directly slapping him to the ground. This two-hit combo was too fast. If there was a martial artist present, he would definitely be dumbfounded. Jun Changshao didn't know what level Rose Queen had reached, but he clearly understood that the gap between him and her was like a big realm. Damn it! Swish, he flew up, raised the True Yang sword high, and shouted angrily, "Scarlet Sky Raging Flame Slash!" Hoo! Flames rose, and a large area seemed to have turned into a sea of fire in an instant. Then, it violently rolled and gathered together, forming a huge flame slash. Yi Xingqian used a weapon to perform self-slash back then, which gave him a lot of ideas. Therefore, when he was managing the sect, he often wondered if a spiritual force-type martial technique like the Scarlet Sky Raging Flame Slash could be combined with a weapon to unleash a stronger power. Later, he really figured it out. Hoo! Under the support of the scorching flames and the cold sword, the power was indeed stronger than before. If it was Lan Jingting, he would definitely be shocked. But at this moment, he was facing Rose Queen. Not only was she not scared, but she was also pleased. At least you have some ability. But, she gently raised her hand, and water droplets appeared in the air, and then gradually gathered in front of her, forming a weak water flow. She said, "No matter how hot the fire is, it will be extinguished when it meets water." Damn! This woman also knows water. Jun Changshao couldn't care less about water restraining fire. He raised the True Yang sword and slashed out another Scarlet Sky Raging Flame Slash. Hoo! Two huge flaming sword lights pressed forward, and the power was so strong that the space was scorched black and collapsed. Swish! Rose Queen's right hand gently waved, and the water attribute gathered in front of her splashed out, and gradually condensed into the shape of two phoenixes. The flames were like dragons. The water was like phoenixes. Two forms, two powers, a battle of dragons and phoenixes. Caw. The space couldn't bear the burden and could only collapse to express that it was very uncomfortable and wanted to cry. Boom! In the end, the two different forces collided violently in midair, forming an extremely hot atmosphere on one side and an extremely refreshing one on the other. Jun Changshao's face was slightly ferocious. After the collision of moves, he could clearly feel that the opponent's water power had the upper hand. Although his fire power could still compete, it would be completely suppressed sooner or later. Swish! Jun Changshao put his sword back into the spatial ring, and then took a horse stance in midair. He clapped his hands together, and his index and middle fingers protruded out. His black hair fluttered in the wind as he roared, "7 mysterious sunglow, hoo! Two special red and orange energies instantly gathered in the sky, and instantly filled his body, and gradually compressed between his two fingers, forming a dazzling light. Rose Queen frowned. This light was a bit familiar. Break! With a shout with an echo, red and orange light beams suddenly burst out from Jun Changshao's fingertips. The speed was so fast that it seemed to have pierced through the space in an instant, and rushed to Rose Queen in the blink of an eye. Boom! It was above the divine grade, and it came from the first and second volumes of the martial arts. The impact was very strong, and it directly sent Rose Queen flying thousands of feet away before she could stabilize her body. Swish! The defense enchantment in front of her that was dented by the bombardment gradually dissipated. She raised her head and said angrily with a pink face, "The remnant scroll that I kept close to me was stolen by you." Remnant scroll? Stolen? Jun Changshao's face was full of question marks. Swish! At this moment, the space suddenly shook, and Rose Queen appeared in front of him. She said with her phoenix eyes wide open, "Looking at you acting like a dog, it turns out that you're a thief." Boom! In an instant, the ground within a radius of dozens of miles instantly caved in by several feet, and dust rose all over the sky, covering the sun. Chapter 11-12. When Queen Rose was conquering various planes, she had accidentally obtained a remnant manual that contained a supreme aura. Her martial arts aptitude was very strong, but after decades of research, she only managed to comprehend the martial arts technique and could condense the powerful orange beam. The main thing was that the manual had detailed records. Only by cultivating the first remnant could one cultivate the second remnant. In other words, without the first remnant, Queen Rose would not be able to cultivate it even if she had monstrous aptitude. This was not a big problem because what she cared about was not the martial arts technique, but the special energy contained in the manual itself. Very strong. Very strong. With a woman's super perception, Queen Rose even guessed that if she could comprehend the energy contained in the manual, she would definitely have unimaginable gains. If Woody knew what she was thinking, he would be amazed that someone in the mortal world could detect the profound meaning hidden in the 7 profound sunglow break. Although Queen Rose could sense the secrets hidden in the remnant, she could not figure out the mystery, so she could only keep it close to her and study it when she had nothing to do. But, suddenly, the remnant disappeared one day. It was the kind of mysterious disappearance that came out of nowhere. Queen Rose's first reaction was that someone had stolen the manual when she was not paying attention. When she heard Jun Changshao shout 7 profound sunglow and the last word break, she was sure that not only had it been stolen, but he had stolen it. How could the possessive 4th-generation Empress of the Spiritus continent tolerate someone stealing from her? Thus, she didn't care about anything else and directly appeared in front of Gosheng. Her actions were as fierce as a tiger's eruption. Her palm strike caused the ground dozens of miles to collapse instantly. The scene was simply too terrifying. However, when the dust gradually dissipated, Queen Rose frowned. Caw caw caw. Caw caw caw. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Jun Changshao appeared in her field of vision with clenched fists. Although the ground around him had sunk by several feet, only the place where he was standing still remained intact and was not directly crushed by the domineering force. Queen Rose was surprised. So you're in the Return to Origin realm. Swish! Jun Changshao disappeared into thin air. When the camera followed, he had already appeared in front of Queen Rose. His iron fist gathered explosive power and punched out. Caw caw caw. Space was unable to withstand the pervasive energy and began to crack like a spider web. Boom! Jun Changshao's expression was indifferent as he punched out. Although Rose Queen had arranged a defensive barrier in front of her in advance, it still shattered in an instant, and she was sent flying. Boom! When he landed on the ground, a wave of air spread out. It was as if an invisible hand was pressing down on the ground behind him, causing it to sink down by 10 zhang in an instant, forming a long and wide bowl-shaped pit. This guy, Rose Queen frowned. From the way he attacked just now, she roughly guessed that this person's cultivation was not below hers. It turned out that he wasn't lying. It turned out that after he recovered from his injuries, he was really very powerful. When did such a powerhouse appear in the Spiritus continent? Why didn't he hear his subordinates mention it? Experts who had reached the Return to Origin realm were definitely at the top of this plane. There was no way they were unknown. Shwa! Jun Changshao appeared behind Rose Queen without anyone noticing. He gently raised his hand, and a vast amount of energy gathered into a ball. He said coldly, "This is my strength." When he was suddenly bombarded just now, he directly crushed the universal talisman. Now that his cultivation had skyrocketed, he was no longer as cheap as before. It was as if he had been reborn. He was simply like a solemn strongest king. Me. Jun Changshao. In this alternate world, it wasn't a joke. Boom. The energy gathered in the palm of his hand suddenly exploded after expanding to the limit. The huge shock wave directly collapsed the space and shattered the ground. Plop. Rose Queen landed awkwardly, but the corner of her mouth raised into a smile. This guy didn't let her down. Shwa! Her lily-white hand waved in the void. Hum. Hum. The space trembled slightly, and a crescent-shaped weapon carved with a rose pattern appeared. Rose Queen sat on it lightly with her right leg over her left leg. She smiled like a big sister playing on a swing. I take back what I said just now. Jun Changxiao's cultivation had increased, and his strength was not below hers. She took it seriously and took out her exclusive weapon, Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade. As a queen who had conquered various planes for thousands of years, she definitely had a lot of weapons and equipment. It was just that she rarely used them because the opponents she encountered were too weak. Rose Queen said, "This weapon of mine must see blood, so..." Her voice lowered. "You have to be prepared to die." Whoosh! As soon as she finished speaking, she flew away. Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade followed closely under the command of its owner. The blade flashed red as if it was eager to drink blood. Whoosh! Rose Queen waved her finger, and as if there was an invisible string connected to the weapon, the opponent suddenly spun and shot away. TSK Jun Changxiao sneered. Shwa! Shwa! In the next second, the flying Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade split into several halos and attacked from different directions. Because it was too fast, it was hard to tell which was real and which was fake. Ding! 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 Jun Changxiao stepped forward and waved the True Yang sword, slashing out sword energy and knocking the halos away. Suddenly, the space behind him shook. The real Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade tore through space and swept over with a powerful force. Jun Changxiao noticed it immediately, but he did not have time to dodge. He could only instinctively turn around and raise his sword to meet it. Ding! Crack! Whoosh! The Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade swept past the neck and returned to Rose Queen. Jun Changxiao stood in midair with a dull expression on his face. The True Yang sword in his hand had been broken in two, and the tip of the sword was stuck in the ground. It actually broke. Jun Changxiao, who had always taken pleasure in breaking weapons forged by Master Fan, had his weapon broken by someone else today, and it was even a high-quality True Yang sword made by the system. This was the first time in his life. Pain! A sharp pain came from his neck. Jun Changxiao subconsciously raised his hand to touch it. It felt wet, and when he retracted his hand, it was covered in blood. It turned out that the moment the Red Lotus Demonic Moon Blade flew over, it drew a thin and long wound on his neck. Rose Queen, who had taken Go Shing's weapon and neck, said indifferently, "If your weapon was a bit worse, your head would have flown out by now." Jun Changxiao casually threw away the broken True Yang sword, his eyes flashing with endless anger. Rose Queen said, "Your weapon and the equipment you are wearing should be a set. Now that one is missing, it should be useless, right? Obediently hand over the second remnant of the 7 profound Dawn Break scroll and become this queen's servant. Perhaps you can live." How did this woman know that I have the second remnant of the 7 profound Dawn Break scroll? Wait! Suddenly, Jun Changxiao remembered that after he bought the second remnant scroll, there was a strong rose fragrance on it. He hurriedly merged his soul into the spatial ring and sniffed the original scroll. Then, he compared it with the remaining fragrance in the air and exclaimed, "This is the smell." Chapter 11:13. The rose scent from Remnant Scroll 2 was exactly the same as the rose scent from the Rose Queen. This made Jun Changxiao very confused. Why would the things I bought from the mall have her scent? The system explained awkwardly, some of the items in the store may have been transferred from other dimensions after the host bought them. Jun Changxiao's expression froze. After a while, he said, "You mean, Remnant Scroll 2 actually belonged to this woman at the beginning, and I took it from her after I bought it from the store, so it's a second-hand item?" "That's right," the system said. It had known about this for a long time, but it did not expect that people from 2 different dimensions would meet each other. One must know that on the same continent, one might not even encounter someone who stole someone else's item in their lifetime, let alone in a distant dimension with a different system. I understand. Jun Changshao suddenly understood and thought to himself, no wonder she called me a thief. I'm innocent. It was obviously the system store that did it, and I was still unaware of it. Wait a minute. Jun Changshao hurriedly asked, 7 mysterious sunglow break belongs to that part of the goods, and remnant scroll 1 was also stolen from another dimension. The system said, it should be. Jun Changshao broke down and said, if the person who was stolen is very strong, won't I have to be careful when I go to other dimensions in the future to avoid being discovered? It shouldn't be so coincidental, the system said. If he Woody knew the truth, he would definitely roar loudly, it's just so coincidental. Of course. He did not know that remnant scroll was stolen by Jun Changshao. He had been imagining that the sect of all times was created by the 7 mysterious sage, and that the remnant scroll copy was left behind before he ascended, so he was willing to be a closed-door disciple. There's still remnant scroll 3. Jun Changshao broke down and said, it was also stolen. The system said, the host is fighting, please focus on proper matters. That's true. Jun Changshao withdrew his distracting thoughts and looked at the Rose Queen. He smiled coldly and said to himself, if I stole from someone else, I might feel a little ashamed. But since I stole from you, I feel very good. Gou Sheng's favorable impression of this woman had dropped from 0 to -999 after his neck was almost sliced open by the Red Lotus demonic moon blade and his head was almost separated from his body. Seeing his disdainful smile, Rose Queen said coldly, you don't plan to hand over the scroll? I'm sorry. Jun Chang smiled and said, what I obtained belongs to me. There's no reason to hand it over. This was a tacit admission that she had stolen the second part of the 7 profound sunglow remnant scroll. This infuriated Rose Queen, and she immediately controlled the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade to attack. Jun Changshao raised his hand and made a grabbing motion in the air. The 9 heavens 10 earth sky tyrant spear appeared out of thin air, instantly erupting with an unparalleled might that could only be possessed by a divine tier weapon. Comparing weapons? Sorry, Gou Sheng is not weak either. A cold glint arrived first, followed by a spear like a dragon. Shwa! Shwa! Jun Changshao held the spear with both hands, and the spearhead spun at an extreme speed, carrying the power to disrupt space as it fiercely pierced out. Ding! 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 The densely packed crescent moons were all sent flying. Even their true bodies were sent flying by the tip of the spear when they emerged from the void. Xiao! Rose Queen waved her hand, and the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade returned to her like a boomerang. Looking at the weapon that was emitting 7-colored light, she said in surprise, I didn't expect you to have an even stronger weapon. Shwa! Shwa! Jun Changshao performed a set of Yu Clan spear arts, and assumed a very Chinibyu stance. He said proudly, what else can I do? Shwa! Rose Queen tore off her cloak, revealing her voluptuous figure. Then, she held the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade in front of her and said, if you have a weapon that is not weaker than this queen's, then let's have a good fight. Does this mean that she was just warming up? Shwa! Shwa! Jun Changshao flew over, pouring his psionic energy into the spear, and began to stab around crazily. Streams of 7-colored light burst out. Because there was no special spear art, he could only use it directly. Needless to say, at his level of strength, even if there was no matching martial skill, he could still unleash a power that could shake the world. Bang! 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 Rose Queen rushed up. She did not use the Red Lotus Devil Moon Blade. The latter seemed to be connected to her mind and attacked in front of her, breaking all the incoming spear lights. Ding! 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 Boom! 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 In an instant, the two of them engaged in a fierce close-range battle in the sky. All kinds of energy whistled crazily, like a domineering hand ruthlessly breaking open the spatial barriers. Fortunately, this place was extremely remote and there were no cities. Otherwise, it would have been destroyed by the aftershock. As Jun Changshao and Rose Queen fought to a standstill, all kinds of power gradually spread out, alarming the Soul Clan warriors far away. What's that? It seems like they're fighting. The warriors thousands of miles away could not see the battle clearly, but they could see 7 colored streams of light flickering at the end of the sky. This is Her Majesty's aura. Could it be that a powerful enemy has invaded and is fighting fiercely? Let's go. Let's go. In the city where the Empress lived, the Soul Clan experts flew quickly in the direction of the aura. Jun Changshao had always despised the low strength of the warriors in this plane, but in a short period of time, at least dozens of Soul Clan experts comparable to Wu Xing rushed over. A half-saint with 3 digits, and Wu Huang with 4 digits. They set off from Empress City, and the aura they emitted inadvertently was already very terrifying. The Soul Clan warriors who acted together had all followed the Empress to fight all over the world. Not only were their cultivation levels high, but they were also very strong in combat. It could be said that this was definitely the most elite force in the Soul Clan continent. According to the game's plot, Jun Changshao entered the dungeon and started from these small ones. Finally, he fought all the way to Empress City to challenge the final boss. However, by coincidence, the first half was gone, and he directly faced the final boss at the beginning. Boom! Boom! High up in the sky, the battle entered its climax. With the support of the Universal Talisman, Jun Changshao temporarily had the strength of the Soul Clan continents return to Origin Realm, which was on par with Rose Queen. As for weapons, the two of them were also on par, so after hundreds of moves, there was no clear winner until the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Damn it! Jun Changshao was anxious. The Universal Talisman had a time limit. If he could not gain the upper hand and defeat her, once he entered a period of weakness, wouldn't he be finished? Other than the palm print from the upper realm, this was definitely the most difficult opponent Jun Changshao had encountered since he transmigrated. Regret. He should not have entered the Soul Clan continent so rashly. Swish! Swish! At this moment, streams of light flew over from the distant sky like a swarm of locusts. Boom! Boom! Jun Changshao fought with Rose Queen again. Seeing that the dozens of streams of light at the front were all at the level of Wu Sheng, he immediately sneered and said, "Are you afraid that you will lose, so you called your subordinates over?" Lose? No way. Rose Queen shouted coldly, "All of you, stop 10,000 feet away from me. No one is allowed to take a step in." This voice, which contained the unquestionable aura of an empress, instantly shocked dozens of Soul Clan experts and made them turn around. After careful consideration, they retreated 10,000 feet away and floated in the air obediently. Jun Changshao said, as expected of the Queen Ling Ping who ruled the Soul Clan continent. Her words are like an imperial edict that can't be disobeyed. Queen Ling Ping. Rose Queen said, she abdicated thousands of years ago. Ga. Jun Changshao was dumbfounded on the spot. This woman should not be Empress Ling Ping. Then, who was she? Chapter 4. P.S. After writing this chapter, I am also stunned. Because, the 13 chapters that I owe are finally completed. Great joy! Ha ha ha. After laughing, I was stunned again. Because many readers have rewarded me during this period, and there are a few more leaders in Chidian and Genesis. I still need to work harder. Chapter 11-14. Jun Changshao always thought that Rose Empress was Ling Ping Empress, but the latter had abdicated for thousands of years. This news was a bit fucked up. Or, number 1 and number 2 souls deliberately said that they were in a low realm in order to deceive him about a non-existent empress. Jun Changshao said, "Then you are." Rose Empress proudly looked up at him with her nostrils and said, "The 4th Empress of the Soul Clan, Rose Empress." Jun Changshao sneered and said lightly, "I don't care if you are Ling Ping, Rose, or Peony or Lily." While speaking, he took back the dominating sky spear and took out the hard knife. He threw it from left hand to right hand and from right hand to left hand, saying, "Those who offend Jun must pay the price." Wait. Where is my knife? Swish! Rose Empress waved her sleeves valiantly and held the hard knife with her fingers. She smiled and said, "This thing is very delicate. Is it used to peel apples?" Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. "I didn't even take care of my own weapon." "Don't worry, don't panic." Jun Changxiao held it with both hands and said calmly, "My weapon is very dangerous. You'd better hand it over quickly." As the first wish weapon given by the system, without the unsealed talisman, he would be backfired if he pulled it out forcibly, let alone an outsider. Pull out the knife. Maybe there was still one unsealed talisman left. Rose Empress played with the hard knife and smiled. "How dangerous is it?" This, Jun Changxiao thought for a while and said seriously, "To be honest, this is my natal weapon, the purple-green knife. In this world, in this universe, only I can pull it out. Moreover, I once swore that whoever can pull out my violet-green treasured saber will be my master." The system said, "You have to apologize for tampering with the classic lines." Rose Empress was interested and said, "As long as I pull out the purple-green knife, you will become my servant and obey me forever?" Jun Changxiao's expression was complicated. "Hurry up and pull it out. I can't wait to see you get seriously injured by the backlash." The Rose Empress held the blade between two fingers and said, "Watch carefully and see how this Empress pulls the blade out." "Wait." Jun Changxiao said with a pained expression, "Do you really have to do this? Since you've made an oath, I can only pull out this azulate saber." AI. Jun Changxiao seemed to have made up his mind. He raised his head and sighed, "If you can really pull it out, you will be my destined master. I will naturally listen to your orders. Pull it out. Quickly pull it out." "No, no, I have to hide further away." Clang! Just as Jun Changxiao turned around, he heard the sound of a scabbard behind him. He hurriedly turned around to look, and the expression on his face instantly collapsed. At this moment, Rose Queen was holding the pocket-sized scabbard between two fingers of her left hand, and the index finger and thumb of her right hand were holding the pocket-sized hard-to-sheath blade. She actually pulled it out, and it was a clean one. Impossible! How could this be? Why was she able to pull out my unsheathed blade? Why didn't she suffer any backlash? A dream! It must be a dream. Slap! Jun Changxiao slapped himself. After feeling the pain, he was sure that this was not a dream, nor was it his imagination. The system was puzzled. Hard-to-sheath blade is the first wish weapon given by the system to the host. It is equivalent to signing a contract. Outsiders should not pull it out. Perhaps, it paused and said solemnly, "This saber is the same as the azulate sword. Whoever can pull it out will be the host's sweetheart." Jun Changxiao roared, "If this is my sweetheart, I might as well die." The queen who ruled the world must have an extreme personality. It was okay to admire beauty from afar, but if it was her sweetheart, the scene would definitely be. Gou Xing's mind instantly flashed with the scene of Arya training the soul race. He even brought himself into the role of number 1 and number 2. He hurriedly returned to reality and could not help but shudder. Rose Queen played with the wooden hard-to-sheath blade and said with a smile, "I pulled out the azulate sword." "What do you say?" Jun Changxiao said indifferently, "You must have used some method. Otherwise, there is no way you can pull it out." Rose Queen said with a cold face, "You want to go back on your word?" "That's right." Gou Xing wanted to go back on his word. His unyielding dignity would definitely not allow him to be a servant. Swoosh! Rose Queen rushed over with the hard-to-sheath blade and said, "I hate people who go back on their words. Today, either you kneel down and submit or die." Buzz! Suddenly, a weak light flickered. Rose Queen lowered her head and found that the hard-to-sheath blade in her hand was surging with an aura. It was a very bad aura. Not good. Boom! There was a sudden explosion in midair. The power instantly shattered the space within more than 10 miles. Jun Changxiao happened to be in the range and was inevitably affected. He immediately retreated backward. When he stabilized himself 5 miles away, he asked with a face full of question marks, "What's going on?" Hard-to-sheath blade exploded, the system said. Exploded? Jun Changshao almost spat out a mouthful of blood and said, then it's gone. Although the shape of the weapon given by the first wish was a bit strange, it had always been with him all these years. Even when he encountered danger, it could always save him. If it suddenly disappeared, it would be difficult to accept. Hard-to-sheath blade, my hard-to-sheath blade, swoosh. Just as Jun Changxiao's emotions were brewing, a stream of light flew out of the explosion area and then quickly fell into his hand. When the light dissipated, it was the hard-to-sheath blade that had been sheathed. It's fine. Ha ha ha. It's fine. The hard-to-sheath blade was fine, but Rose Queen was not. Because the explosion was too sudden, there was no time to dodge or throw it away. When the smoke dissipated in midair, she appeared in the field of vision with disheveled hair. Puff! Rose Queen spat out a mouthful of blood and looked very weak. The power generated by the explosion of the hard-to-sheath blade was not inferior to Jun Changxiao's hundreds of punches. It was similar to a sudden sneak attack, so it was inevitable that she would be injured. Even if someone pulled out Jun Changxiao's first wish weapon, it was like a time bomb that would explode unexpectedly. Sigh. The system sighed and said, after being with the host for so long, the hard-to-sheath blade has become shameless. Looking at the embarrassed woman who had been blown up, Jun Changxiao happily shrugged and said, I said it was very dangerous. Do you believe me now? Rose Queen wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and said angrily, despicable. At this time, she had already understood that there was a secret hidden in the knife, and he had deliberately made her pull it out. Your Majesty! Swoosh! 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 Seeing that Rose Queen was injured and spat out blood, the experts of the 10,000 soul race immediately rushed to the battlefield, their eyes flashing with anger as if they wanted to burn Jun Changxiao alive. Don't! Clang! Just as Rose Queen was about to order her subordinates to stay away, the crisp sound of a sword being pulled out rang out. She hurriedly looked at Jun Changxiao and saw that this guy was holding a big sword with strange words engraved on both sides and exuding a supreme majesty. Go Sheng, who had crushed the universal talisman, was like a mighty god of war, and the unsealed hard-to-sheath blade was like a supreme god. Ugly woman. Jun Changxiao raised the hard-to-sheath blade with the words engraved on it, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes as he said, 10,000 years ago, you invaded the falling star continent, causing the world to collapse and the spirit Qi to wither. Today, Jun Changxiao, will take all the old debts that I owe you. Hum. A terrifying binding force instantly spread out. Ga. Ga. The experts of the soul race who had rushed over first and whose strength was at Wu Sheng's level froze in midair, their eyes filled with shock. Rose Queen was also shocked because the special power that spread out had a powerful binding force. Although she could resist it, if it continued to seep into her, she would be bound and unable to move sooner or later. Is this indigo blade a divine artifact from the upper realm? Chapter 11:15. After Queen Rose was injured by the explosion, the soul race experts swarmed forward. She was the ruler of the continent, and they could not afford any mishaps. As soon as they moved, Jun Changxiao unhesitatingly removed difficult sheath because the universal talisman had a time limit. He could not waste any more time. Whoosh! 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 An extremely terrifying binding force spread across half of the sky. All the soul race experts at Wu Sheng's level were frozen in midair, and their eyes were filled with shock. At that moment, they strongly felt that not only were their bodies out of control, but their lives could also be easily taken away. Yes. As long as Jun Changxiao swung his sword, they could only stretch out their necks and wait for their heads to be chopped off. Queen Rose's bright eyes were also filled with shock because the weapon in Jun Changxiao's hand emitted an aura that was even more powerful than the spear just now. There should not be such a powerful weapon in the mortal world. Then there was only one possibility: his purplish-green saber came from the upper realm. This was definitely not Queen Rose's imagination. In fact, Difficult Sheath's second form was, strictly speaking, out of the category of mortal weapons. Although Emperor Jinwei's spear was made of divine stones from the upper realm and was very powerful, it was still a little lacking. Whoosh! Queen Rose did not think too much about Difficult Sheath. She immediately flew into the distance, wanting to leave this area before she was completely bound. You think you can run? Jun Changshao suddenly chased from behind and slashed at her with Difficult Sheath. Instantly, a sword ray that cut through space appeared. Slash! Queen Rose's movements were slowed down in the binding domain. Although she managed to condense a barrier in front of her in time, it was instantly broken, and the sharp sword ray brushed past her. Sizzle! A sword mark appeared, and blood splattered. Whoosh! Queen Rose's expression changed slightly. She sealed the wound on her right shoulder and continued to fly out of the binding domain. After Jun Changshao had crushed the universal talisman and released the unstoppable blade, the lofty empress had already lost her calm and collected demeanor. She had become battered and exhausted. As expected. Jun Changshao thought to himself, the second form of the hard-to-withdraw blade will have a hard time suppressing experts of a higher realm. The powerhouses of the soul race that were comparable to Wu Sheng were frozen in midair like statues after he glared at them. Only Queen Rose was still able to move. It was clear that she had reached the upper limit of control. Furthermore, Jun Changshao could clearly feel that under the activation of the talisman of heaven and earth, the power of the unstoppable blade had increased. If he used it normally, it would be difficult to cause trouble for the woman. The system said, so, the host needs to continue the modification. Jun Changshao didn't think about this problem for the time being. He turned into a streak of light and chased after them. Shwa! Shwa! His sword flashed and his movements were as ferocious as a tiger. Boom! 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 The exploding sword chi blasted onto the ground, creating sword scars that looked like rivers that cut through mountains and rivers. Plop! Queen Rose fell from the sky with wounds all over her body. Looking at Jun Changshao, who was proudly floating in the air, her eyes flashed with anger. After fighting outside for thousands of years, she had always laughed to the end as the victor. Now, she was beaten into a sorry state by a fellow who she regarded as a servant. This was really uncomfortable. It was especially hard to accept that he actually called her an ugly woman. Shouldn't she care that Jun Changshao came from the falling star continent? She actually cared about being called ugly. Sure enough, women loved beauty. It was her nature. Boom! At this moment, dust rolled up from the ground, and the ground caved in once again. After the dust dissipated, Jun Changshao held the hard-to-withdraw blade in one hand and the neck of Queen Rose in the deep pit with the other. His eyes were cold as he said, "You lost." Queen Rose's face was filled with pain as she said, "Damn it. This emperor should have killed you from the beginning when you were injured." "No." Jun Changshao said, "You don't have the chance." It was true that he was suppressed by Queen Rose in terms of strength, but if he really used all his trump cards, even if it was difficult to win, it would not be a problem for him to protect himself. "You've already lost. Fulfill the bet and become my servant," Jun Changshao said coldly. As he spoke, the strength of his palm did not relax at all. Queen Rose's face gradually turned red, and her breathing became difficult. The system complained, "The host really doesn't know how to be gentle with women. She almost killed me just now." Jun Changshao coldly said, "Pity the fairer sex, my ass." Even if the enemy was a peerless beauty, Go Sheng would not be merciful. Moreover, to deal with such a woman, if he did not play ruthlessly, she might think that he was joking. Of course. Jun Changshao raised the hard-to-withdraw blade and pointed at the group of soul powerhouses who were bound in the air. "You can refuse. As the price for breaking the bet, they will all die." His eyes and words were cold, and a strong killing intent filled the air. Queen Rose did not doubt that this guy would do as he said. "I lost," she said with difficulty. "I am willing to be your servant." She was injured, and her subordinates were controlled. The situation was extremely unfavorable for Queen Rose. Compromise was the best choice. Hand over your soul origin, Jun Changshao said indifferently. Without absolute control, he would definitely not believe it so easily. This was because Zhang Wuji's mother had said that the more beautiful a woman was, the more likely she was to lie. However, it was strange. I've already captured this woman and have no strength to resist. Why hasn't the side quest been completed yet? For this reason, Jun Changshao deliberately opened the mission panel. After confirming that it was defeated and not killed, it was even more puzzling. You! How can I hand over my soul origin? Queen Rose was choked to the point that she could not breathe. Jun Changshao let go. It had to be said that this guy was really heavy-handed. Queen Rose's white and tender neck was pinched until there was a 5-fingered handprint. Huff! Huff! After panting for a while, her eyes suddenly turned dark red, and she said, I can be your servant, but it seems that the victor between us hasn't been decided yet. Not good. Jun Changshao's expression changed. Swish, light flickered in front of his eyes, and when Go Sheng came back to his senses, he was already in the illusory secret realm. Huff huff. In the sky, violent energy whistled. Jun Changshao raised his head and found that Queen Rose was suspended in midair. Her body was surrounded by a majestic green attribute, completely enveloping her. Her weak face gradually recovered its rosy color, and the sword wounds on her body quickly healed. Even more miraculous was that the attributes that enveloped his body gradually condensed into a solid dark green armor. Shwa! Queen Rose, who seemed to have transformed, raised her hand, and dozens of strange patterns appeared in the air in front of her. Balls of green energy shot out like cannonballs. Bang! 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 Jun Changshao broke it with his sword, but his brows were also wrinkled. This woman's combat strength was obviously stronger than before. Since this emperor ascended the throne, I have never used my absolute domain. You are the first. Queen Rose, who was wearing a green armor, regained her usual arrogance that made people look up to her. Absolute domain? Jun Changshao held his sword with both hands and said, I'm so nervous. Shwa! The unstoppable blade suddenly slashed forward. The sword light that originally cut through everything only brought about ripples after crossing the void, but it couldn't hurt the space barrier at all. Queen Rose raised her hand, and the dark green attribute gathered into a big hand. It easily caught the sword light and said, in the absolute domain, this emperor is the heaven, and you are just an ant. Bang! The sword light collapsed. Heaven? Jun Changshao rushed up with his sword, and the cold sword light slashed out one after another, and shouted, it is used to resist. It is used to push. Chapter 11:16. Boom! Boom! In the half-real secret realm, Jun Changshao waved his hard-to-retract saber with both hands and started a fierce battle with Rose Queen. God? Then let's go against it. Boom! 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 Sword light burst out wantonly, and sword energy filled the space, but this absolute domain was very strong. No matter how hard Jun Changshao hit it, it still showed no signs of cracking. Rose Queen was even more valiant. She didn't use any weapons and only relied on her fully armed armor to fight against him. Even when she was cut, there wasn't a scratch left on her body. Jun Changshao didn't think that her equipment level was very high and could resist his hard-to-retract saber. The reason was still related to the so-called absolute domain. The system said, this should be a space similar to the illusion of a formation. Inside it, she can obtain an endless stream of energy, thus increasing her combat power and defense. How do I crack it? If you ask me, who should I ask? Therefore, Jun Changshao hated this system very much. He liked the female system given to him by the portal of the plain battlefield. After all, it always provided him with corresponding help at critical moments. Boom! Boom! The two exchanged dozens of blows in the absolute domain. Outside. That was the area where Jun Changshao was just now. The binding force disappeared with his disappearance, and the Soul Clan experts were freed. As long as the hard-to-retract saber was unsealed, it would definitely cause a massacre. They were very lucky to survive. "Where's Her Majesty? Look!" An expert pointed to the area where Jun Changshao and Rose Queen disappeared. There was a fist-sized green energy ball shining there. Absolute Domain. Her Majesty's strongest killing move. The last time she used it was when she fought Ling Ping Queen before she ascended the throne. These Soul Clan experts had followed Rose Queen for thousands of years, but they were lucky enough to see her use her killing move once, and it was to fight for the position of Empress. Damn it! That guy is a warrior of the Falling Star continent. How did he come here? Everyone began to think about Jun Changshao. After all, they just heard that this guy represented the Falling Star continent to settle scores. In the Absolute Domain, that guy is dead for sure. However, if the Empress pursues this matter, I'm afraid we'll all be implicated. Instead of entering the Falling Star continent, they had allowed the people from the Falling Star continent to enter their territory. This was no small matter. Boom! Boom! Inside the Absolute Domain, Jun Changshao fought Queen Rose for another 10 rounds. He fell to the ground with sweat all over his forehead. He thought to himself, the spiritual energy inside my spiritual core is being consumed faster than outside. Furthermore, even if he stood still, his spiritual energy would still be consumed. The system said, if the host continues to fight, before the talisman of heaven and earth's effect ends, the host's spiritual energy will be completely exhausted. Jun Changshao was silent. Floating in midair, Rose Queen looked at him with her nostrils and said, "Did you notice that your energy consumption is fast?" Of course. They didn't disappear at will. Instead, they fused into my body. Jun Changshao's expression turned ugly. No wonder the more he fought, the more tired he was, while the more energetic she was. It turned out that she had stolen his spiritual energy. This Absolute Domain was too strange. "Xiao Bai," Rose Queen said, "your strength has exceeded this emperor's expectations. My name is Jun Changshao." Jun Changshao brandished his sword and said angrily, "Don't call me Xiao Bai." Boom! Boom! The two of them engaged in a fierce battle in midair again. From the looks of it, although Rose Queen's defense was strong, she was still unable to do anything to Jun Changshao, who had a blade that was hard to retract. She was not in a hurry at all, because this kind of trump card was mainly used to consume energy. As long as she continued to defend, sooner or later, she would exhaust her opponent. Rose Queen was not in a hurry, but Jun Changshao was. Originally, the Talisman of Heaven and Earth had a certain time limit. Now that he was in the Absolute Domain and his spiritual energy consumption was accelerated, if he could not deal with the other party, he would really be reduced to a servant. Boom! Boom! Jun Changshao launched a crazy bombardment. The second form of hard to retract could be said to be full of firepower. The explosive sword energy formed by the second form of hard to retract was scattered everywhere. However, when it hit the space barrier, it only left a shallow mark and could not break it. The more it was so, the more Rose Queen chose to avoid the battle. To be honest, after being abused just now, although her injuries seemed to have healed, her combat power was still greatly weakened. So, it was not wise to choose to fight with force. Huff! 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 A few minutes later, Jun Changshao stood on the ground, panting, with beads of sweat oozing out of his forehead. Rose Queen was surprised. "You are quite strong." If he had been in Yang Kai's place, he would have long since collapsed to the ground in exhaustion. Jun Changshao could be so strong, not because of the treasure of kidney, but because of the two spiritual cores in his body. However, after a short 10 minutes of outburst, more than half of them had been consumed. Damn it! He raised his head angrily and said, "I should have killed you just now." No. Rose Queen said, "You don't have the chance." In this kind of serious situation, the system really wanted to laugh out loud because this woman was saying the same thing the host said just now. The same tone and intonation, but the two people were swapped. It was too funny. Give up. Rose Queen said, be my servant and I will treat you well. Although she already knew that this guy came from the Falling Star continent, she still hoped to subdue him. After all, as long as she trained him well, he would be able to follow her everywhere. Smack! Jun Changshao covered his face with his hands and tilted his head backwards, laughing out loud. What are you laughing at? Rose Queen frowned and said. Jun Changshao threw hard to withdraw blade on the ground and laughed sinisterly, I am laughing at your arrogance. Rose Queen said indifferently, do you still have a trump card that can break my absolute domain? Correct. Jun Changshao suddenly raised his hand, and the stone statue he obtained from the interdimensional battlefield appeared out of thin air and then floated in front of him. Swoosh! He put his hands together in front of his palms. Huff huff huff, violent energy crazily surged from the stone statue. Jun Changshao, whose soft black hair was fluttering in the wind, looked up and stared at Rose Queen with a cold gaze. Ugly woman, meet the devil of hell. Don't mess around. The system roared, this thing will cause the host to lose, transform. Jun Changshao shouted loudly. Huff huff huff, the stone statue flickered red and turned into thousands of rays of light. Red lines like some kind of ancient restriction appeared on Jun Changshao's skin, and then he turned into a gargoyle. Buzz buzz buzz. The violent and terrifying aura around him became stronger and stronger, shaking the absolute domain violently. Rose Queen's gaze became serious. Not good. Suddenly, her pupils shrank. Boom! In an instant, a huge hand that seemed to be condensed from stone reached over and directly blasted Rose Queen away. She crashed into the barrier, causing the barrier to tremble even more violently. Thud! Thud! Jun Changshao, who had turned into a stone statue, rushed over, then jumped up, raised his right fist, and smashed down on the other party. Boom! Rose Queen did not have time to dodge. She used her battle armor to withstand the heavy blow, and her entire body caved in the spatial barrier. Outside, the soul martial artists discovered that a small area of the suspended energy cluster suddenly protruded. Boom! 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 In the absolute domain, Jun Changshao, who was augmented by the power of the stone statue, launched a new round of bombardment. With every attack, the spatial barrier would cave in, and the sphere that appeared in the soul martial artist's vision would protrude. It was very similar to the scene of Master Xing detoxifying the poison in the lampshade in Kung Fu. Not good. It's going to explode. Retreat! 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 Boom! The soul martial artists had just moved when the absolute domain exploded, and the impact instantly swept them away. They fell to the ground and vomited blood. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the blast caused by the explosion, the petrified Jun Changshao walked out of the air. His right hand was holding Rose Queen, whose green armor was cracked in many places and whose face was extremely weak. Plop! He threw her to the ground, and the unstoppable saber flew over. Swoosh! Jun Changshao placed his sword on her neck and said gloomily, is the battle over? Rose Queen, who had been ruthlessly beaten up in the absolute domain, was exhausted. The dark green armor on her body gradually dissipated, and sword marks appeared on her body again. She had lost. She had really lost this time. Your Majesty! The soul experts stood up and rushed over, ignoring their injuries. Swoosh! Jun Changshao raised his petrified hand and restrained an expert comparable to Wu Sheng with an invisible force. Then, with a bang, he crushed him into a bloody mist on the spot. This scene shocked the other soul race martial artists so much that they paled. Don't come over. Rose Queen gathered her last bit of strength and shouted out 3 complete words. However, at this moment, it was not a matter of whether they could come over or not, but whether Jun Changshao would let them go. Swoosh! He raised his hand again and restrained 2 soul experts with an invisible force. With 2 bangs, they turned into a bloody rain. This kind of killing experts comparable to Wu Sheng with a raise of his hand was simply too terrifying. Jun Changshao. Rose Queen said with a pale face, "Don't hurt them. I am willing to be your maid." Swoosh! Jun Changshao grabbed her with one hand and tilted his head with a sinister smile. "Stupid woman, do you still have the right to make conditions in front of me?" His eyes became redder and redder, and his body became more and more petrified. Even his voice became low and hoarse. It felt like a demon from the depths of hell was gradually awakening. "It's over, it's over." The system collapsed. This guy has lost his mind. To be precise, he had not lost his mind yet. However, killing the soul experts without hesitation meant that Jun Changxiao's soul had been controlled by the power of the stone statue, and he had become cold-blooded and ruthless. In more technical terms, he was going to turn evil. Chapter 11-17. In the dimensional battlefield, Jun Changxiao had used the stone statue's power once. Although he defeated the sky battlefield's ghost, he also beat up the Purple King. This thing was poisonous. It could easily erode one's mind and cause one to do irrational things. Therefore, Jun Changxiao repeatedly emphasized that he should not use it unless he had no other choice. Trapped in the absolute domain, the consumption of spirit energy accelerated, and the restriction of the cosmic talisman, Jun Changxiao could only use it as a last resort. Become a servant? Impossible. Even if I, Jun Changxiao, have to step on this woman under my feet. Moreover, this was a dimension that had invaded the falling star continent. Enemies were everywhere. So what if he turned it upside down? The treasure from the dimensional battlefield was really awesome. With the stone statue's power, Jun Changxiao not only beat up Rose Queen, but he also broke the absolute domain that she was so proud of. It was broken. Especially when he easily killed a soul expert comparable to Wu Sheng. Rose Queen's mind was blown. The soul continent itself had little spirit energy. It had to invade other dimensions to cultivate experts with difficulty. Even one death was a huge loss. However, before Jun Changxiao used the stone statue's power, it would not be a big problem if she admitted defeat. But now, she had no right to negotiate because the other party had turned evil. Whoosh whoosh. A violent and gloomy aura whizzed out, making the space that was healing even more solemn. Jun Changxiao grabbed Rose Queen. The strange patterns on his body and his red eyes made him look like a gargoyle that walked out of hell. Wake up! Wake up! The system kept shouting in its heart, hoping that the host would stay true to his heart and not be controlled by the gloomy aura and become an emotionless dark demon king. Needless to say, the effect was there. Jun Changxiao was fighting against the power that emerged deep in his heart. His red eyes would occasionally become clear for a short while. Because of this unyielding resistance, his face gradually became ferocious. Swoosh! His mind slowly went out of control. He lifted Rose Queen, and violent spirit energy surged out and completely enveloped her. He began to squeeze her. It's over, it's over. The system broke down and said, the host's head is filled with thoughts of killing. Caw caw caw. The pressure continued to erode, and Rose Queen's armor began to crack. Fortunately, she was wearing clothes underneath, so there was no risk of her being exposed. Boom! 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 At this time, dozens of Spiritas powerhouses had already rushed over. They gathered all sorts of martial skills and blasted Jun Changxiao's back, but none of them were able to shake him in the slightest. Annoying fly! Die! Hoo-hoo! Jun Changxiao raised his hand and gathered his psionic energy, sending dozens of soul race experts flying. They fell to the ground and blood splattered everywhere. Caw caw caw! The strength in his hand was still increasing, and Queen Rose's armor was completely shattered. Her body sank into the spiritual energy, and she felt excruciating pain all over her body, as if she was about to be crushed into pieces. Shwa! At this moment, Jun Changshao suddenly let go of his hand and could not help but take a few steps back. He hugged his head and screamed in pain. His eyes also rapidly switched between red and clear. "There's still hope," the system said happily. The host's unyielding will was still fighting with the power that controlled the soul in his body, and he was still fighting for the control of his body. Wah! Rose Queen fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, she was exhausted and seriously injured. She could only lie weakly on the ground and watch that guy screaming in pain. Ah ah! Ah ah ah! The power that controlled the soul was still surging wildly, and the pain it brought made Jun Changshao's face extremely hideous. Boom! Boom! In order to vent the pain, he clenched his fists and bombarded the void frequently as if he had lost his mind. The poor space could not withstand the damage, and a large area suddenly collapsed. Shwa! Shwa! While Jun Changshao was fighting with the power of the stone statue, the soul race experts endured the pain and desperately flew to Rose Queen's side and brought her to a relatively safe area. "Retreat," Rose Queen said weakly. The spirit-kin experts didn't dare to provoke the crazed Jun Changshao, and they were just about to take the Empress away. However, they saw the Empress collapse to the ground with a thump after the attack, and she didn't stand up again. "Queen," one of the experts said, "that guy is down." Not only did Jun Changshao fall, but the power of the stone statue that corroded his soul also receded like the tide, and his petrified body was gradually returning to its original state. The system said, he forced the power that controlled the soul to retreat. The host's willpower is really strong. But, it said pessimistically, if this tribulation is over, how will the other danger be passed? Jun Changshao, who had not completely turned black, was now in a severe coma. Although Rose Queen was injured, her subordinates were still there, and it seemed that she did not intend to retreat. "Damn it! Can't you hold on a little longer?" "Queen, that kid seems to have fainted." The soul race experts, who had planned to take Rose Queen away, saw Jun Changshao lying on the ground motionless, and their faces immediately lit up with joy. This martial artist from the falling star continent dared to come to their territory, severely injure Rose Queen, and kill his companions. Now that he was unconscious, wasn't it the same as being at the mercy of others? Not good. Rose Queen has fainted too. Rose Queen's injuries were not light either. After being rescued by her subordinates from Jun Changshao's berserk area, she could not hold on and fainted. "What should we do? What else can we do? We must kill this guy to prevent future trouble. Let's go together." The soul race experts were worried that Jun Changshao was faking it, so they did not dare to go alone. Instead, they went together and kept a distance for the time being. It's over. The system broke down. He's going to die. Although Jun Changshao had resisted the stone statue's power, after falling into a coma, his various functions were severely reduced. Not to mention a group of experts comparable to Wu Sheng, even an ordinary person would be finished with a brick. This guy has indeed fainted. Moreover, from the frequency of his breathing, his injuries should not be light. Everyone, let's go together. Chop him into meat paste. Swish! 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 The soul race experts swarmed forward, and powerful energy erupted. Don't look at how they were injured just now, and the martial skills they used were greatly weakened. However, killing a person who was severely unconscious was still a piece of cake. Huff! 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 Dozens of energy pressed down from all directions. Jun Changshao, who had been unconscious and defenseless, could be said to be in imminent danger. At this time, who could save him? No one. Because he came to the soul race continent alone, without any disciples or companions, from the perspective of 10,000 years ago, any soul race on this plane could be counted as his enemy. Sigh. At this time, the system sighed and said, the situation does not allow me to hide anymore. Huff! Huff! At the moment when all kinds of energy pressed down, Jun Changxiao's body surged with majestic airwaves and instantly shrouded him. Huff! As the explosive background music played, a large hand gently swept across the camera. A white cloak with the word "Department" engraved on it appeared in front of Jun Changxiao, and a seemingly real yet illusory body appeared in front of him. Due to the angle and the lingering clouds, it was difficult to see the true appearance of Mount Lu. Swish hard to retract saber, which was inserted into the ground in the distance, suddenly flew over and was caught by the mysterious person. He lightly waved his sword and broke all kinds of energy attacks. That guy has a helper. Retreat! 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 Swish! 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 Seeing that all kinds of moves were easily broken, the soul race experts did not think too much and hurriedly fled with the unconscious Rose Queen. The mysterious person did not chase after them. Holding hard to retract saber, he stood in place, his back view shrouding the unconscious Jun Changxiao with a sense of security. Ding! System assistance has violated the rules and will be punished. Ding! System entering shutdown state. Countdown 10. 9. 8. 7. Host. I'm a little tired. I can't accompany you for the time being. The mysterious person turned his head and looked at Jun Changxiao, who had grown from a weak assistant to a strong one. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and then gradually faded. 1. Ding. System assistance shutdown. Ding. All functions of the strongest sect system are suspended. Main and side missions are operating as usual. Jun Changxiao could not hear everything that was happening in front of him and the unfamiliar system notification that rang in his ears. This was because not only was he unconscious at this moment, but the duration of the cosmic talisman and the enhancement effect of hard to retract saber had also ended. Chapter 11:18. The battle between Jun Changxiao and Rose Queen was over. The space that had collapsed because of the power was crying silently and licking the wound slowly. Who won this battle? Without a doubt, it was Jun Changxiao. But the price was very high. Not only did he consume a universal talisman, but he also activated the power of the stone statue when he opened the seal. This incident also proved that Jun Changxiao, who could practically do whatever he wanted on the Starfall continent, was still a far cry from the top experts of other realms. As for using the worm of time and space to travel to other planes, the result might be running away. After all, the Soul Clan was not a fighting clan. In the vast universe, there were stronger clans. With Jun Changxiao's current cultivation, he would be crushed if he started to travel to other planes. Of course. He didn't expect that he would meet a big boss at the beginning of the game when he sneaked in, and it was not Ling Ping Queen. Otherwise, he would definitely develop in the Falling Star continent for a while before coming here. Since it had already happened, it was useless to complain. Drip, drip. The sky that was gradually recovering was covered with dark clouds. Drops of rain splashed on Jun Changxiao's face, waking him up from a coma for a day and a night. Pain. Explosion. Rising from his body and head. What's going on? Jun Changxiao had no strength and could only lie on the ground and ask in his heart. The system, which liked to ridicule him, should have answered at this time, but there was no response. Playing dead? Jun Changxiao didn't take it seriously. He closed his eyes and tried to recall everything. He remembered the scene where he used the stone statue to torture Rose Queen, and then, he couldn't remember anything. I should have won, but what happened after that? The pain in his head made him give up thinking. It was not until he was drenched in the rain for a few hours that he stood up with difficulty. Because of the double debuff, he only had the strength to walk without any cultivation. I'm very weak now. I need to find a place to recuperate as soon as possible. Jun Changxiao stood firm and then put the sword and the stone statue into the space ring. He dragged his weak body and walked in a direction casually. During this time, he called the system, but there was no response. So he cursed in his heart, "Are you playing dead?" A few hundred miles away, there was a mountain range that had collapsed due to the shockwaves. Jun Changshao arrived with great difficulty and found a passable cave. Who? As soon as he sat down, his entire body felt like it was falling apart. The side effects of using the universal talisman and the unstoppable blade at the same time were much better than before. Right. Have you completed the side quest? With a thought, Jun Changshao pulled out the system panel. But, the various data that appeared in his field of vision were all jumbled up. Only the main quest and side quest were still there. What's the situation? Jun Changshao, who was from Earth and had come into contact with a lot of advanced technology, was stunned for a moment before he blurted out, "Poisoned? Dead? Malfunctioning? System? Say something. Don't tell me you're dead." No matter how much Go Shing shouted in his heart, the voice that had been bickering with him for years never sounded. "It's over," Jun Changshao said with a face full of despair. "The system must have malfunctioned. It can't operate normally for the time being." Temporarily shutting down and not operating meant the same thing. He guessed correctly. The system must have a self-detection and repair function. What I need to do now is to recover my cultivation as soon as possible. In the past, without the help of the system, Jun Changshao might have panicked a little. But now, he was the sword saint and martial saint, so he didn't feel helpless or helpless. Instead, he calmed down quickly. Swish! Using his weak will, he fused it into the spatial ring and locked it on the vortex-shaped spacetime secret realm. Whether I can get out of this predicament or not, it's up to you now. After resting for a while and gathering some strength in his body, Jun Changshao dragged himself to his feet. He took out array flags from the spatial ring and inserted them in front of the cave. Wang! An isolation array appeared out of nowhere and sealed off the entire cave. Fortunately, setting up an array doesn't require spiritual energy. Jun Changshao wiped the sweat from his forehead and fused his will into the spatial ring again to bring out the spacetime secret realm. Huff! The entrance of the vortex was formed out of thin air. Jun Changshao walked in and was surprised to find that there was an extremely strong heaven and earth attribute in the spacetime secret realm. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Middle grade is better than low grade." Of course. What he really cared about was the time acceleration, so he quickly tested it with the time in the outside world. In the end, he got the answer that it was 100 times faster. The low grade is 50 times faster and the mid grade is only 100 times faster. The improvement isn't too obvious. Jun Changshao shook his head and said. Swish! He suddenly turned sideways and said in a displeased tone, "Host, you're really arrogant. You're not even satisfied with this." He suddenly split. What an idiot. But after Jun Changshao finished speaking, he sat down dejectedly. He wasn't used to the absence of that annoying retort. No matter if it's poison, crash, or malfunction, it should be able to solve it. Jun Changshao took a deep breath and summoned the spacetime worm. He put his hands on his knees and said, "It's just 2 years of weakness. It'll only take 7 or 8 days even if it's 100 times faster, wait." He frowned and said, "How long can I accelerate in this mid-grade spacetime secret realm?" The low-grade spacetime secret realm could only accelerate 50 times for 3 days per month. This mid-grade spacetime secret realm could accelerate 100 times. It couldn't be that he could only accelerate for 6 days per month, right? It's useless to think about it. Host, let's take it one step at a time. Jun Changshao suddenly said in the tone of the split system. As he spoke, he became melancholy. This kind of melancholy became stronger and stronger as the days passed. When he had nothing to do, he would always split himself into the system. It was very silly and sad to sit alone in the secret realm and talk to himself. However, what made Jun Changshao gratified was that 6 days had passed outside, and he was still able to stay in the secret realm without being expelled. It seems that it's not just 6 days. If there's no time limit, it would be great to be able to cultivate in there all year round. On the 7th day, The feeling of weakness in Jun Changxiao's body was suddenly swept away, and a strong aura of a great sage emerged from his body. Paw! He stood up and covered his face with his hands as he laughed strangely. This man was back again. After the sword and martial saints recovered, Jun Changxiao did not leave the space-time secret realm. This was because he needed to confirm whether the mid-grade space-time secret realm had an unlimited flow or a fixed time limit. On the 8th day. On the 9th day. On the 10th day, Jun Changxiao and the space-time worm were forcefully sent back to the outside world. Sigh. He shook his head and said, "It's only 10 days." To be able to accelerate 100 times and last for 10 days, this was undoubtedly very satisfying. What else could Gosheng not be satisfied with? Looking at the sleeping and pocket-sized space-time worm, Jun Changxiao was speechless. It's been at least 3 years in there, and this guy still hasn't woken up. Especially the system, that idiot. Wasn't it just poison, crash, garbled code, and malfunction? If it couldn't recover in 3 years for such a small matter, how could it have the nerve to call itself the strongest system? Or perhaps, the time acceleration had no effect on this guy, so it seemed that 3 years had passed inside, but in reality, only 10 days had passed like in reality? Forget it, forget it. Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, "I'll just rely on myself." He would not become completely out of his wits just because the system did not appear. Swoosh! He reached out and removed the spell formation he had set up, got up, and left the cave. However, just as he stepped out, a notification sounded in his ears, ding. The system's auxiliary punishment has ended. Restarting. Loading 10%. 20%. 100%. Ding. The system's auxiliary punishment has been successfully loaded. Ding. All functions of the strongest sect system have been activated. All programs are operating normally. Hearing the series of mechanical notifications, Jun Changxiao's face turned black with question marks. Fuck your grandpa. At this moment, the long-awaited voice that made people gnash their teeth in anger exploded in their ears with a deafening decibel. The next time you fucking use that broken stone statue, I curse you to be alone for the rest of your life. Chapter 11:19. Because the system's assistants automatically appeared to help the host resolve the crisis, it was forced to shut down for violating the rules. And the result? With the acceleration of the space-time arcana realm, it was back in just 10 days. Especially when it was scolding Jun Changxiao, the system's anger and agitation showed the passion that a hot-blooded person should have. Outside the cave, Jun Changxiao took a few puffs of smoke and said awkwardly, "So that's how it is." He, who already understood the situation, did not expect that the system was not malfunctioning, but was suspended for a period of time because it was punished to save him. Other protagonists who lost their gold finger would either be very sad or work hard. He, on the other hand, was confused the whole time, until the gold finger came back. Fortunately, the host bought the space-time arcana realm in advance, or else. The system calmed down and said, "God knows if you can return to the falling star continent alive." It was not joking. With Jun Changxiao's state 10 days ago, he would be in danger for 2 years in the Spiritus continent. And the power of the stone statue, the system said again, once it's activated, the host will lose his mind. You must not use it again. Of course, the treasure from the upper realm could provide strong combat power, but if one's body was really controlled one day and he fell into darkness forever, he would become a living dead. Jun Changxiao took out the stone statue that was temporarily in a gray state and said, "This thing is evil, but, without it, I'm afraid it would be difficult for me to defeat the Rose Queen." The system said, "So, this also tells the host that a real powerhouse can't only rely on treasures, but also needs to constantly strengthen himself." Okay. Jun Changxiao nodded. This time, he came to the Spiritus continent alone. Although it had something to do with the wrong information, it also indirectly showed that he was still too weak. If he did not use cheats, he was nothing. That's it. I'll focus more on cultivation. He had used all sorts of trump cards to barely defeat Rose Queen, and in the end, he had almost made a mistake. This gave Lord Changshao a wake-up call. He could no longer be as ferocious as before, and when he checked his battle record, he was left with 0 points. The system said, the host's journey in the dimensional battlefield and the East Sea fishery state has been too smooth recently. You should know that there are many powerful planes and experts in this vast universe. The road ahead is long and arduous. I will search from top to bottom. It was rare for Jun Changshao and the system to have a good talk in such a gentle manner, and the relationship between them was also sublimated in their shared trials and tribulations. You can transform your body? Nonsense. Otherwise, the soul race experts would have chopped you into pieces long ago. Hurry up and come out. To be honest, I've been tolerating you for a long time. Hurry up and let me punch you a few times to vent my anger. Fuck, if it weren't for the restrictions, do you think I wouldn't want to come out and kick you? After a round of bickering, Jun Changshao opened the side mission panel and asked in confusion, I tortured that woman until she couldn't take care of herself. Why haven't I completed it yet? Yes. The system was also puzzled. Very strange. Defeating the Rose Queen in the side mission meant that Jun Changshao had used all 3 of his trump cards and even broke the opponent's absolute domain. Logically speaking, he should have met the criteria. Could it be wrong? It should be killed and not defeated. Such a low-level mistake can only be made by that guy in the Jianghu. It's impossible for the system to make such a mistake. That makes sense. Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, there's only one possibility. I didn't torture her hard enough and didn't meet the requirements for defeating her. The system was speechless. He almost strangled her to death, and it wasn't hard enough. However, the system said, that woman's absolute domain was forcibly broken by the host. Her injuries must be very serious. I'm afraid it will be difficult for her to recover in 3 to 5 years. So, Jun Changshao sneered and said, this is a good opportunity. The system was stunned. Host wants to catch her. Those soul race experts who came to help are only at the level of Wusheng. Now that she is seriously injured, it will be difficult for her to recover in a short time. I definitely can't miss it. Jun Changshao said seriously. To put it bluntly, he still didn't want to give up on the side quest. Not to mention the punishment for failing the mission, because of Rose Queen, he had wasted so many contribution points and an opening talisman. If he didn't complete it within the time limit, he would definitely suffer a double loss. Jun Changshao could eat anything, but he couldn't suffer a loss. Not to mention, the space-time worm was still asleep and couldn't return to the falling star continent. Why not give it a try? What if he was lucky enough to succeed? The system considered for a moment and said, I hope the host can be careful. It didn't object, mainly because Rose Queen's injuries were very serious. As long as an expert of her level didn't appear, there wouldn't be much danger in the Soul Race continent. Let's go to the Empress City. Some time ago, when he was investigating the Soul Race continent, Jun Changshao already knew that the Empress lived in the Empress City, which was also the most sacred and supreme city in the entire plane. Of course. In order to avoid being discovered, Gosheng disguised himself as a middle-aged man with a wine gourd hanging from his waist. Do you miss the wine sword immortal? Like the evil sword immortal. Fuck. Jun Changshao wasn't in a hurry to go to the Empress City because he could freely wander around the Soul Race continent without that woman following him. So, as long as he encountered a big city, he would go in to scout for information. 2 days later, he came to one of the famous big cities of the Soul Race. However, just as he sneaked in with his stolen identity, he saw many Soul Race martial artists gathered on a public notice board on the main street, and they were whispering to each other. Jun Changshao went over and found a notice pasted on it. The content was Her Majesty has a chronic illness, and she's hiring experts from Chihuang with a large sum of money. Chronic illness? Jun Changshao sneered and said, I'm afraid she's injured by me and won't be able to recover in 2 to 3 years, so she can only seek help from folk experts? I didn't expect Her Majesty to be sick too. It's a pity that I don't know medicine, or I'd definitely go to the Empress City. Her Majesty has a special imperial physician, but now she's hiring experts from Qihuang. This means that it's not simple. It's useless for ordinary doctors to go. Please make way, please make way. Just as everyone was discussing, Jun Changshao squeezed in from outside and took off the notice without hesitation. Who is this guy? He actually took off the notice so straightforwardly. Could he be a capable expert from Qihuang? Looking at Jun Changshao's departing figure, the Soul Race martial artists all thought hard. In the end, the answer they came up with was that they had never seen this person before. City Lord's Mansion. Jun Changshao stood in the middle of the martial stage, his hands resting on the wrists of the injured man. After pretending to diagnose him, he smiled and said, City Lord Ku, this person's injuries aren't serious. I can heal him with a single pill. Since he had changed his appearance, he definitely had an identity. He was now called Yi Xingchen. If Pei Ania knew that the patriarch had used his name to swindle people in other planes, he would definitely be so angry that he would drink a few jars of wine. Is that so? City Lord Ku had a doubtful look. This subordinate of his had been distracted for a moment when he was cultivating, and he had gone berserk. Many doctors had already sentenced him to death. It was really unbelievable that he could be cured with a pill. Shwa! Jun Changshao waved his hand and threw a beginner healing pill into the mouth of the patient. Then, he put it on his wrist again. In order to prevent the other party from jumping up and down immediately, he deliberately used his spiritual energy to suppress the other party's meridians, temporarily putting him in a state of semi-shock. Half an hour later, Jun Changshao retracted his hand, and the meridians were no longer suppressed. The effect of the pill was fully unleashed. The injured person slowly opened his eyes and then jumped up with a whoosh. This, City Lord Ku's eyes widened. After confirming that his subordinate's injuries had healed, he was wild with joy and said, Mr. Yi is really a divine doctor. Jun Changshao said, the Empress has contracted a chronic illness. As a citizen, it can be said that my heart is in pain. If City Lord Ku has no doubts about my medical skills, please allow me to quickly go to Empress City for treatment. Now, immediately, let's go. After City Lord Ku confirmed that the person who revealed the notice was really capable, he hurriedly arranged and personally brought Jun Changshao to Empress City in the afternoon. On the way, thinking of the doctor he brought, if he could cure the Empress's chronic illness, he would definitely be promoted and have a meteoric rise in the future. Sitting in a luxurious car pulled by a special spiritual beast, Jun Changshao looked at the scenery and secretly said, Empress Rose, I have 100 ways to sneak into your palace and then go against your heaven. A few days later, Jun Changshao followed City Lord Ku into Empress City. He didn't even have time to look at the scenery and came to the magnificent Empress Palace. The guards of the palace were all women, and they were all good-looking. Because Jun Changshao had no interest in beauty, he was too lazy to describe their appearance. City Lord Ku. In the East Courtyard's main hall, a valiant and formidable-looking female general glanced at the slovenly Jun Changshao and said, Is this the doctor you brought? That's right. City Lord Ku smiled and said, This person's medical skills are superb. He can even cure a seriously injured person who has gone mad in half an hour. So magical. The female general's eyes were filled with strong doubts. However, the Empress's illness couldn't be delayed. Since it had been verified by City Lord Ku, there shouldn't be any problems. Thus, she said lightly, Follow me. Swish. 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 As soon as the voice fell, dozens of fully armed soldiers came over and surrounded Jun Changshao. Then, they brought him out of the hall and into the Empress's palace as if they were escorting a prisoner. Empress. The female general walked into the palace and saluted, City Lord Ku has found a Qi Huang expert. Let him come in. Hearing the voice coming from inside, Jun Changshao was immediately sure that this was Empress Rose. Moreover, her voice was weak and her injury was serious. Ugly woman. You can't escape from the palm of my hand. Creak. The door opened and Jun Changshao was escorted in. The female general and the soldiers retreated and guarded the palace. The room where Empress Rose lived was very big, especially the bed covered by the red gauze curtain was also very big. Jun Changshao estimated that it wouldn't be a problem to sleep with 5 or 6 people. He couldn't help but sigh secretly, this is really luxurious. Swish! A delicate hand stretched out from the gauze curtain and said weakly, you should know how to take pulses, right? Whing! Whing! At this moment the array inside the palace silently appeared and isolated the outside. Swish! Jun Changshao strode over and directly grabbed the wrist and sneered, then it will be very troublesome. Whoosh! The gauze curtain was blown away by the explosion. Empress Rose appeared with a weak face and messy hair. Seeing the other party being so rude, she said in a deep voice, how dare you? Presumptuous. He he he. Jun Changshao scratched his face and laughed like a monkey, the monk can run away, but the temple can't run with him. You should accept your loss and be the servant of this Lao Jun. System, why am I, the host, so cheap? Empress Rose's beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light, and she said in shock, you are Jun Changshao. Chapter 11:20. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Jun Changshao, who was holding on to Rose Queen, returned to his human form from his monkey form. In fact, he could rely on his powerful cultivation to barge in, but who knew if there were any mechanisms in the palace that could allow her to escape in an instant. Thus, he snuck in as a doctor and lost a healing pill for this. Sigh. His heart ached. Rose Queen, who had her meridian locked, was unable to move. Her weak eyes were filled with anger and surprise. Although she had lost the battle with him 10 days ago, the other party must have paid a heavy price to win. Why was it as if nothing had happened to him? He must have cheated. After all, she was the boss of the Spiritus continent. Although the situation was very unfavorable, Rose Queen still calmed down and said, this is my palace, do you think you can easily enter and leave? Shwa! Jun Changshao dragged her down from the bed, and said with a cold gaze, stop playing tricks on me, hurry up and hand over your soul origin. If it wasn't for the fact that the other party was the empress of a generation and could control the entire Spiritus, as well as the fact that the side quest hadn't been completed yet, he would have already ruthlessly destroyed the flower. Rose Queen's face was pale, you're hurting me. This weak voice, coupled with a face that was so weak that it made one's heart ache, was truly a pitiful beauty who seemed to be injured and waiting for a hero to save her. Aren't you the heavens? You can't even bear this little bit of pain. Jun Changshao said indifferently. Rose Queen glared at him angrily, and said, are you a man or not? After conquering various planes for so many years, he wasn't always fighting. Sometimes, he would even use schemes, such as the common honey trap. With Rose Queen's beauty, as long as she made a few flirtatious movements, she would be able to captivate men. But, facing Jun Changshao, he was exceptionally powerless. Rose Queen even suspected that this guy wasn't a man. Jun Changshao sneered, whether I'm a man or not, only my woman knows, what does it have to do with you? Rose Queen kept staring at him, and he kept staring at her. The two of them stared at each other for a long time, and their eyes were sore. The system urged, stop staring, this is the forbidden area of the palace, there might be some experts, hurry up and take her away. That's true. Jun Changshao reached out and pulled Rose Queen over. Then, he hugged her and sneered, I'll let you know if I'm a man or not. Rose Queen's face paled. Let me go. She panicked. In the past, when she used the honey trap, she would always slap the other party to death when they were about to get close to her. She had never had such intimate contact before. Jun Changshao pretended not to hear her and strode towards the door of the bedroom. But just as he was about to remove the array, he heard a loud boom. The array actually exploded by itself. Shwa! Shwa! In an instant, figures rushed in from the outside. There were 20 of them in total. They instantly blocked the entrance of the bedroom. The aura of the old man in the lead was so strong that it should not be inferior to that of Wu Xing's great perfection. Fuck! Reinforcements came so quickly. Or could it be that even though he had set up an isolation array, that woman still had a way to contact the outside world? However, what surprised Jun Changshao even more was that the Spiritus powerhouse that rushed in had a strange look in his eyes, as if he didn't understand his existence. Brat! That old man reacted very quickly, and shouted in a deep voice, "You've eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall," actually daring to hug Her Majesty. Jun Changshao sneered and was about to rush out with his cultivation when he heard Rose Queen say, "He is the doctor I invited. He is treating my injuries." Fuck! What's going on? Jun Changshao was a little confused. Doctor? The old man secretly heaved a sigh of relief and said with a faint smile, "Your Majesty, your injuries are so serious. Even if there is an expert from Chihuang, you might not be able to recover. Why don't you just abdicate?" Hearing this, Jun Changshao's mind flashed with various TV series plots and blurted out, "Your subordinates are rebelling." Rose Queen, who was in his arms, was not surprised at all. She said lightly, "Abdicate. Abdicate. Abdicate. Give it to me." At this moment, a woman who was not inferior to Rose Queen walked in from outside the bedroom. There were many powerhouses behind her. Judging from their clothes, they seemed to be powerful and could be regarded as civil and military officials of the Soul Clan. "It's really you." Rose Queen's tone was still not surprised. The beautiful woman said lightly, "I said that I would take back the throne sooner or later. I should have known." Rose Queen said regretfully, "I should have killed you back then. If I knew that the general I promoted would touch my throne, I wouldn't let her live," the beautiful woman said. "Excuse me." At this moment, Jun Changshao interrupted their conversation and collapsed. "What's going on? Can you explain? I'm really confused now." Rose Queen said lightly, "She is the former queen you are looking for." "Former?" Jun Changshao said in shock, "Queen Lingping." Rose Queen said with a cold face, "She is the woman who was defeated by me and seized the throne when I was injured." In fact, when the old man led people to break into the bedroom, she had already understood the situation. Because the old man used to be Queen Lingping's confidant, he took the initiative to retire after she ascended the throne. Rose Queen, who was confident in her strength, didn't take him seriously. But now, it seemed that she was still careless. Jun Changshao was confused. "Come on, I was robbing, and you suddenly appeared to seize the throne." It was similar to the plot of a palace drama. "How could I carry on?" Queen Lingping said lightly, "You are seriously injured and can't recover in a short time. Our Soul Clan can't be without a leader. You'd better abdicate quickly." "You think so, too?" Rose Empress looked at the civil and military officials standing behind her. "Yes." Everyone said in unison. Since the fourth queen took office, she had been carrying out a high-pressure policy. Anyone who opposed her would be punished. It could be said that she lived a very cowardly life. What's more, in terms of political achievements, Queen Lingping was not inferior to Rose Queen. She was also gentle to her subordinates. Naturally, she was more willing to support her to regain the throne. Puff! Rose Queen, who was injured, spat out a mouthful of blood. Over the years, she had conquered various planes for the Soul Clan and brought many benefits and resources. But finally, she raised a group of traitors. "Hey!" Jun Changshao said sarcastically, "Your subordinates seem to have betrayed you." Rose Queen glared at him fiercely. "If you hadn't beaten me like this, they wouldn't have the courage to force me to abdicate." Swish! The old man pointed at Jun Changshao and shouted angrily, "How dare you, a quack, poison Her Majesty? Come on! Cut him into pieces." Go Sheng's expression suddenly became interesting. Was he going to use his identity as a quack to make the news that Rose Queen was poisoned to death, and then announce it to the public so that Queen Lingping could ascend the throne smoothly? Sorry. I won't take the blame for this. Swish. Jun Changshao held Rose Queen with one hand, took out the green dragon crescent blade, and transformed into the loyal and brave Guanyin Chang. He shouted, "Rebels, you are plotting to usurp the throne. I, Yi Xingqian, swear to protect Her Majesty today." Achoo! In the sect of all times, Yi Xingqian, who was practicing, suddenly sneezed. Chapter 11:21. They came to kidnap Queen Rose, but her subordinates betrayed her and followed the former queen to overthrow her. This was a little interesting. Jun Changshao would definitely not mind watching the show. He might as well integrate himself into the identity of Yi Xingqian and do something meaningful. The so-called meaningful. Since you came to rebel against her, I'll save her. Perhaps I can use this opportunity to establish a revolutionary friendship and make her submit to me as a servant. Jun Changshao had already come up with a perfect script in the shortest time possible. He even thought of the ending. He would help Queen Rose regain the throne, become the regent, and control the entire Soul Plane from behind. Queen Rose's face turned cold. Only she knew that this guy had disguised himself. He was not Yi Xingqian, but he suddenly wanted to protect her. What kind of show was he trying to put on? Kid! The old man said in a deep voice, "You're courting death." He was in charge of contacting the former queen and leading a group of civil and military officials to force her to abdicate. Seeing that the situation was set, the doctor who came to see the doctor suddenly jumped out to express his loyalty. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two soul experts behind him rushed over. Powerful energy gathered in their palms as if they could crush everything. Whoosh! Jun Changshao held Queen Rose in his right hand and waved the green dragon crescent blade in his left hand, slashing out an extremely powerful and domineering saber aura. Not good. The two soul experts realized that the other party's saber was very terrifying and immediately circled around to the sides. Boom! The door of the bedroom was shattered. Whoosh! Jun Changshao took the opportunity to fly out with Queen Rose in his arms. Outside, the female generals and soldiers who had been guarding the bedroom were either dead or crippled on the ground. It could be seen that only a portion of the civil and military officials betrayed Queen Rose. In fact, there were still people who would protect the current queen with their lives. Kid, where do you think you're going? Just as Jun Changshao flew out and did not have time to escape, the old man chased out of the bedroom. He waved his old hand and instantly formed a terrifying palm print. Fuck! Go Shing cursed. Then, he tried his best to turn his body so that Rose Queen was facing forward. He used his back to receive the palm print, but he was hit with a bang. Caw caw caw. Activating his mechanical armed wings, Jun Changshao instantly turned into a stream of light and flew out of the forbidden area of the palace. Shwa! The old man landed on the ground with a frown. He had never expected that this slovenly-looking doctor would actually be able to take his palm and run away so quickly. Old Tua! Empress Ling Ping came out and said, "Why don't you chase after him?" Old Tua shook his head. "It's already too late." Empress Ling Ping frowned and said, "The woman is injured now. It's a great opportunity. If she recovers, there will be endless troubles." Elder Tua naturally understood this logic, but he really couldn't catch up with Jun Changshao. He could only sigh and say, "Her injuries are extremely serious. It will take time for her to recover. Let's discuss the matter of ascending the throne first." "All right." Empress Ling Ping turned around and ordered, "Inform all the governors of the major cities to come to Empress City quickly." On this day, the forbidden area of the palace was covered with dark clouds, which meant that the weather was about to change. Whoosh! In the endless sky, Jun Changshao used the power of flying and the mechanical armed wings at the same time. His speed had reached the extreme. Even Empress Rose, who was in a good state, would have to spend some effort to catch up with him, let alone a strong man who was comparable to Wu Sheng at the great completeness. He flew for about thousands of miles. Jun Changshao landed in a dark forest. As soon as he stabilized his body, he spat out blood. Damn it! That old man hit you so hard. Empress Rose, who had been caught by him, said lightly, "Can that guy hurt you? Don't pretend." Damn it! Jun Changshao roared, "I was seriously injured in the fight with you, and I've only just recovered, okay?" Empress Rose was silent. She was in a very complicated mood now because she was saved by the guy who almost killed her. Swoosh! Jun Changshao placed Empress Rose on a rock, then took off his clothes with the remaining palm print on his back. He smiled evilly and said, "I'll let you see if I'm a man." "You? What do you want?" Empress Rose panicked when she saw him take off his clothes. He. Jun Changshao leaned over and said with a strange smile, "This place is deserted, what do you think I want?" Don't mess around, don't come over." Empress Rose hugged her chest, her weak face was pale. Swoosh! At this moment Jun Changshao grabbed her leg, then lifted it and took off her boots. His other hand, 2 chicken feathers appeared out of thin air, and he fiercely scratched the soles of her feet. The system was speechless and said, "Men don't take the blame." The Rose Queen was no different from an ordinary person. So, she couldn't stand being tickled. So, she started to laugh so hard that her eyes started to fill with tears. Then, she started to curse, "Jun Changshao, you despicable, shameless, bastard, ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha." What a man hated most was to be called not a man by a woman. So, in order to prove his innocence, Jun Changshao scratched the soles of Empress Rose's feet for 2 hours, making her laugh for 2 hours. It was very cruel. Swoosh! After the punishment, he stood up. It happened to be dusk, so Goshing's back was very long, which showed what a real man was. The night came, and the sky was full of stars. Empress Rose leaned against the stone wall with messy hair. The fire rising from the bonfire jumped on her weak cheeks, which looked really lovely. Jun Changshao was cleaning a pheasant and said, "I just went to the nearest city. Empress Ling Ping will ascend the throne tomorrow, and you secretly eloped with a doctor." Damn it! Empress Rose gnashed her teeth angrily. It didn't matter if she lost the throne, but it was too high-sounding to say that she eloped with someone else. Jun Changshao skewered the whole pheasant, and then roasted it on the bonfire, saying, "You have lost all of these rights, reputation, and wealth." Puff! Empress Rose spurted out blood. She had succeeded the throne for thousands of years and fought countless fierce battles for the Soul Clan. But in the blink of an eye, she lost everything, which was really unacceptable. "It's you." Empress Rose raised her head with difficulty and stared at Jun Changshao with strong resentment. "You made me lose everything." In theory, it was true. Without Jun Changshao, she wouldn't have been injured, and she wouldn't have given Empress Ling Ping any chance. After all, her strength was enough to crush any rebellion. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "It's your fault for pestering me." Empress Rose stopped talking. Jun Changshao said, "If I'm right, when that woman ascends the throne, she will catch you all over the world. It's my fault for being too merciful back then. I defeated her and didn't kill her. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in trouble today," Empress Rose said with hatred. "There's no medicine for regret in this world." Jun Changshao skillfully rolled the pheasant that was gradually roasted to perfection and said, "But I can help you regain the rights, reputation, and wealth you lost." "You? Help me?" Empress Rose laughed. Jun Changshao said, "I came to your continent this time just to take revenge for invading the Falling Star continent. If I'm right, it should be Empress Ling Ping who gave the order to invade, right?" "Yes." So, Jun Changshao handed over the roasted pheasant and said seriously, "We have a common enemy. Why can't we cooperate sincerely?" The system complained, "Ding. Your friend, Deputy Director Jun of the Strategic Deception Bureau is online." Chapter 1122. Queen Rose fell into deep thought. And Jun Changshao said again, with your current injury, if there is no famous doctor to treat you, it will take at least a few years or even decades to recover by yourself. Can you avoid the search of Empress Ling Ping during this period? Queen Rose's eyes flashed with a trace of hesitation. After Tuo Tai rushed into the palace with people, she realized that something was wrong. But she didn't expect that this hateful guy would save her instead of handing her to Empress Ling Ping. Say it. After a difficult inner struggle, Queen Rose looked at Jun Changshao and said, "What's the condition for you to help me?" Jun Changshao leaned over and said with a smile, "Be my maidservant." In your dreams. If Queen Rose had not been too weak, her words would have splashed her saliva on his face. If you don't like to be a maidservant, you can be a maidservant. Jun Changshao shrugged and said, "Anyway, I won't dislike you." Queen Rose gnashed her teeth and said, "Even if I die, I won't be a maidservant." Swish! Jun Changshao pulled her over and said coldly, "We've made a bet. You have to be willing to accept your loss." Did I lose? Queen Rose stared at him and said. Jun Changshao roared, "You didn't lose. Why did you fall into my hands? They made a bet before. One of them would be a servant and the other would be a maidservant if she lost. But now it seemed that no matter what the result was, one party would break the promise. No one can testify. It doesn't count. After I recover, let's fight again." Jun Changshao raised his finger and pointed at her. He was so angry that he trembled. In this world, there was someone more shameless than me, and it was a woman. Okay. If it weren't for the fact that you, a laid-off empress, still had some value, I would have slapped you to death. Jun Changshao took a deep breath and suppressed his temper. He said, "I help you get back the lost throne, and you give me a generous reward." Okay. Rose Queen said. However, she added, "I have a condition." Fuck. This woman was taking advantage of him. Rose Queen said, "You have to help me recuperate first." I'm sorry. Jun Changshao shrugged. I don't know anything about medicine. Rose Queen said faintly, "If you don't know medicine, you won't sneak into the palace." Jun Changshao really didn't know anything about medicine. Even if there was a healing pill, it wouldn't be of much use to an expert at her level. Besides, even if the healing pill was effective, he would not give it to her. If this brat were to turn hostile and refuse to acknowledge him after his injuries were healed, who could he reason with? Jun Changshao said, "I can help you heal, but you have to promise me one thing. Otherwise, we won't talk about it." What conditions? Hand over your soul origin, said Yi Futian. No way. Jun Changshao pointed at her and said, "Ugly woman, you're just like trash now. If I want you to live, you live. If I want you to die, you die. Don't talk so much nonsense. Hurry up and hand over your soul source." The system was a little surprised. The host, who had always been successful in deceiving others, was actually unable to suppress his irritable temper because of Rose Queen. No. Rose Queen was very stubborn. Good. Jun Changshao stood up, waved his hand and took out the modified vacuum cleaner, and said with a cold gaze, "Then don't blame me. If the other party could see the big picture and hand over her soul origin, he would definitely not choose to go to extremes. After all, she was a queen with status." Paw! Because the other party was in an injured state, Jun Changshao did not activate the enhanced mode. Instead, he raised the flat vacuum cleaner on his shoulder in the third gear mode. However, under the strong suction force, Rose Queen was not affected at all. Instead, she said angrily, "What are you doing? Strange." Jun Changshao broke down, "Why doesn't it work? Whether it was the falling star continent or the battlefield, as long as it was something dirty, the modified vacuum cleaner would always work. Why didn't it work on this woman twice? There's only one possibility." The system said, "Her body is very clean." Impossible. Jun Changshao said, "She is of the soul race, and the leader of the soul race, how can she be clean? The system said, host, have you noticed that in this plane, the soul race martial artists and humans don't seem to be different? Not only was there no difference, there was no difference, especially in life, they were extremely similar to humans. If not for Jun Changshao repeatedly confirming that this was the soul race's continent, he would even suspect that he had entered another plane where humans lived. The system said, according to my analysis, when the soul race invades other planes, they don't go with their bodies, but with their souls. This should be a special ability of the race. You mean, this woman has a body now, so her body is very clean. Once she enters other planes, her soul body will occupy other people's minds, and she will become unclean. Jun Changshao said. The system said, yes. Jun Changshao retracted the vacuum cleaner and said, this thing won't malfunction, right? Paw! Because it was too close, it directly stuck to his head. Oh no! Jun Changshao's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly turned off the vacuum cleaner, but the head that appeared in the camera had become incomparably shiny. Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! The system couldn't help but laugh. My name is Jun Changshao. I'm panicking now. Because of an accident, I accidentally made myself bald, but I didn't become stronger. After spraying the wound super hair growth agent, Jun Changshao sat down cross-legged, crossed his arms and said angrily, what are you looking at, haven't you seen a bald man before? After saying that, he turned to the camera and roared, Director, cut this part out. Needless to say, with Jun Changshao's appearance, even a bald man could look perfect. Rose Queen retracted her gaze, and a faint blush appeared on her pale face. She muttered to herself, he actually looks okay. How about this? Jun Changshao calmed down and said, let's each take a step back. Suddenly, he stopped talking, hugged Rose Queen in his arms, and rushed out with a whoosh. As soon as he left, dozens of fully armed soldiers appeared in the cave, and then looked at the extinguished fire, looked at each other, and hurriedly left. That woman hasn't ascended to the throne yet, and she's already started to capture you. Jun Changshao, who was hiding in the dark, said. Paw! He slapped the woman's hand away and said, why are you touching my head? It's fun. Rose Queen laughed. Jun Changshao almost threw her down in a fit of anger. I've seen many Buddhist cultivators in other planes, and they're all bald, and some even have scars. Why don't you dot a few on your head? Rose Queen said with interest. I'm not a monk. Jun Changshao said in annoyance. Rose Queen said, you're so handsome, you'll look quite good with a kasaya. Jun Changshao ignored her and moved to a safe area. But along the way, Rose Queen kept staring at his bald head, so he roared, Big sister. Now that you've been kidnapped by me, what you should be most concerned about is not whether you can survive, or whether you can regain the throne. What's the meaning of staring at my head? If it looks good, then look. Do you have some disgusting fetish? Chapter 1123. Due to a mistake, Jun Changshao's black hair was all sucked away. It was not a big problem. After all, with the magic hair growth agent, it could even grow to his waist. But Queen Rose had developed a strong interest in baldies. Before her hair grew out, she kept staring at Jun Changshao. Many times, she could not help but reach out to touch his smooth and shiny head. She even imagined him wearing a kasaya and cosplaying as a Buddhist cultivator. Crazy. This woman is crazy. After coming to a safer place, Jun Changshao kept an absolute distance from Queen Rose. Fortunately, this situation only lasted for one night. The next day, under the stimulation of the hair growth agent, her black hair grew out again. It was so long that it could wrap around her waist. Caw! Caw! Jun Changshao broke down and started cutting with scissors. He finally understood old Ding's pain back then. Queen Rose was rather disappointed. Actually, baldies are more suitable for you. Baldies my ass. Jun Changshao said, I'm not a monk. Why do you like to call yourself I? Queen Rose was puzzled. Jun Changshao explained while cutting his hair, because I'm the patriarch of the sect of all times, the strongest sect in the Starfall continent. The strongest sect? Queen Rose was surprised. So powerful? Jun Changshao said, are you interested in joining the sect of all times? With your strength, you can be a hall master. Since this woman did not want to hand over her soul origin, it was not a bad idea to trick her into joining the sect. I'm the queen of the soul race. Why would I become a hall master of a sect? Queen Rose said proudly. Queen. Jun Changshao said indifferently, you're just a phoenix in distress who's inferior to a chicken. You. Queen Rose glared at him angrily. Jun Changshao went back to the topic. If I help you regain your position as queen, how much are you going to give me? He could choose not to make her his servant, and he could choose not to take her soul origin. He could even choose not to force her to join the sect of all times, but there had to be benefits. How much do you want? Rose Queen asked. This. Jun Changshao considered for a moment and said, give me 100 million of those spirit stones that you gave me before. 100 million. Rose Queen said, do you think spirit stones are everywhere in the Soul Tribe? Jun Changshao also felt that he was asking for too much, so he took a step back and said, 50 million is fine. Rose Queen leaned weakly against the stone wall and said, I only have 1 million. If you can help me take back the throne, I'll give it all to you. 1 million? Jun Changshao was obviously not satisfied with this number. After all, the difficulty of helping her regain the throne was no less than an epic quest. Rose Queen said dejectedly, I've been fighting for many years. Although I've obtained a lot of martial arts resources, I've spent them on the construction of my race, so I'm not very rich. Speaking of this, her heart ached. In the past thousands of years, she had done her best to make her race stronger, but in the end, she was betrayed by her people. 1 million is too little. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, if it's only a little reward, I won't take the risk to help you take back the throne. Rose Queen looked at him and said seriously, I can't promise you anything now. As long as you can help me take back the throne, I'll meet all your requirements. Ling Ping, who was supported by her subordinates, was not defeated, but she was not discouraged. As long as there was a chance, she must make a comeback and then take back all the things she had lost. She would not admit defeat and she would not admit defeat. This was very similar to Jun Changshao. I want to be the regent and have the same rights as the empress. Can you give me that? Jun Changshao said. Rose Queen looked at him with a stunned face. Jun Changshao said, if you don't agree with my condition, I really can't find a reason to help you. He would not do anything without benefits, even if the other party looked pitiful and helpless at the moment. Rose Queen said, do you really want to be the regent? If I don't have enough wealth, I can only get enough power. Jun Changshao spread out his hands and said. Rose Queen looked at him and said, do you know that in the continent of the Soul Clan, only the husband of the empress can be the regent and be recognized by the people? Jun Changshao said in surprise, is there such a thing? Yes. The system said, the rule of the Soul Clan has been passed down since the first empress. As a professional system, it would habitually search in a strange world and acquire a lot of necessary historical knowledge to better assist the host. Rose Queen said, if you want to be the regent, you must be my husband. Forget it. Jun Changshao said, I'd rather choose to die than be your husband. I came to the continent of the Soul Clan to gather information and rob if I can. I'm not here to find a wife. Rose Queen did not know who Dog Leading was, but from his words, she could tell that he despised her. Hence, she glared at him with her almond-shaped eyes and said, you think I'm not worthy of you? That's right. Jun Changshao said bluntly. Rose Queen nearly exploded in anger. As the Supreme Fourth Empress, if she were to announce to the public that she was choosing a husband, all kinds of handsome men would line up thousands of miles away from Empress City. He actually thought that she was not worthy. How about this? Jun Changshao said, you can be the prime minister. Rose Queen glared at him and said, "Can you guarantee that you will help me take back the throne?" Jun Changshao shrugged and said, "As long as the Soul Clan doesn't have a powerhouse like you, I can guarantee that I will help you take back everything you lost. Although I'm the Empress of the Soul Clan, my cultivation level isn't the highest," said Rose Queen. Jun Changshao said in shock, "There are people stronger than you." Rose Queen said solemnly, "Not only are there people stronger than me, there are many." The corner of Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. To defeat this woman, he had to use all kinds of trump cards. There were many people stronger than her, so there was no way he could defeat them. Rose Queen said, "There's an ancient palace 100 miles away from Empress City. There are 9 hall masters living in it. They are the strongest combat forces of the Soul Clan." 9. Jun Changshao immediately made a decision. He thought to himself, "I'd better wait for the space-time worm to wake up and bring this woman back to the falling star continent." He would not do a losing deal, nor would he do a dangerous deal. However, Rose Queen said angrily, 10,000 years ago, Empress Ling Ping was in power and ordered the 9 hall masters to invade the falling star continent. They haven't returned to this day, leaving me without a capable assistant. I've suffered repeated setbacks when conquering other planes. Hearing this, Jun Changshao was stunned. Weren't the 9 hall masters she mentioned the 9 soul clans that invaded the falling star continent? There are still 3 of them in my heaven origin soul suppressing pagoda. Thinking of the first and second soul clans, Go Sheng made him angry. He had almost died in the soul clan because he had given the wrong information. Do you mean that the 9 hall masters are not on the continent, and the soul clan has no top combat forces? Jun Changshao asked. Yes. Rose Queen said. Jun Changshao said confidently, "There's no pressure to help you take back the throne. If you can help me take back everything I've lost, I'll give you the right to be second only to me and above everyone else." "No, I want to have the same rights as you." After a moment of silence, Rose Queen said, "As long as you can do it." "I can do it." "All right, I'll give you the same rights as the Empress." A gentleman keeps his word. A man of his word. Just as the two of them were about to make another agreement, Jun Changshao heard a system notification. Ding! Side mission completed. The host has obtained 50,000 contribution points. Chapter 1124. Ding! Side mission completed. Host has gained 50,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points, 98800700000. Ding! Sect contribution points overflow. Ding! Congratulations to host for completing the side mission and triggering the hidden reward. You have gained newly opened Seal Talisman X1 and Experience Talisman X10. Jun Changshao was dumbfounded when he heard the beautiful notifications. Previously, he had used all kinds of trump cards to beat up Rose Queen, but he did not meet the requirements. How did he complete the mission now? Ha ha ha. After a short moment of confusion, Jun Changshao covered his face and laughed. The reward for this super elite mission was indeed generous. Just the contribution points alone were 50,000 points, and he even received 1 newly opened Seal Talisman and 10 Experience Talismans. Awesome! Too awesome! Jun Changshao, who was upset that he did not complete the mission after using all kinds of trump cards, felt that it was worth it at this moment. Is he stupid? Rose Queen's eyes were filled with surprise. Huff huff. At this moment, Jun Changshao's body suddenly emitted a strong aura of advancement, and then he smoothly broke through from 2nd grade to 3rd grade Sword Saint. Queen Rose was even more surprised by the sudden increase in her cultivation base. I understand now. Feeling that his strength had greatly increased, Jun Changshao thought to himself, at my current level, I need at least 10 experience talismans to break through 1 grade. This conclusion came from the fact that he had crushed 6 experience talismans just now. Including the 4 experience talismans he had crushed earlier, it was exactly 10 experience talismans. The system said, In other words, the host has completed the super elite mission and received 10 experience talismans, which is equivalent to giving away 1 grade. Give me 6 more missions like this, Jun Changshao said excitedly. He did not think that he could defeat Wu Sheng with just strength alone. However, if he advanced a few more grades, there would definitely be no problem. The host is very beautiful. The system complained, in your dreams. Ding. Side mission triggered. Ding. Side mission triggered. Hearing the 2 mission notifications, Jun Changshao was overjoyed. The system broke down and roared, I shouldn't have talked so much. Swoosh. Jun Changshao pulled open the side mission panel, and the 2 listed above were divided into side mission 1, as the saying goes, a gentleman never goes back on his word. Host, please help the Rose Queen regain her lost throne, super elite mission. Side mission 2, this mission is a continuation of side mission 1. If the host helps the Rose Queen obtain the throne, the host must obtain the same status as the Rose Queen, such as becoming the regent. If the host cannot complete side mission 1, this mission will be considered as a failure, super elite mission. Fuck. Fuck fuck fuck. Seeing the second quest, Jun Changshao roared, is this forcing me to become her husband? What? What? The system complained, the second mission is no different from hell for the host. Jun Changshao fell silent. Then, he turned his head and looked at Rose Queen with a smile. Both super side quests were related to her. If they were completed successfully, not only would she receive a generous reward, she might even get more experience runes. Seeing him smile so cheekily, Rose Queen panicked and said, You. What are you doing? Shwa. Jun Changshao walked over step by step. He stopped in front of Rose Queen, took off the straw hat and gently covered her head. His eyes were unprecedentedly serious. I will help you take back everything you lost. The system roared, where did the straw hat come from? Rose Queen's expression gradually became sluggish. She tried to raise her head to look at the man, and a ripple rose in her heart. She, who had been in charge of the soul race for thousands of years, had the aura of an absolute king. But now, in front of Jun Changshao, she was like a weak little woman. Night came. Flames burned in the cave, driving away the coldness and bringing warmth. Rose Queen leaned against the stone wall and looked thoughtfully at Jun Changshao, who was sitting cross-legged in front of the fire. The more she looked at him, the more manly he looked. Shaving your hair will make you look more manly. Ah! At this moment, Jun Changshao hugged his head and shouted. He had overflowed a lot of contribution points, so he decided to refresh the intermediate shop on a whim. In the end, he spent more than 20,000 points and did not get anything. The system said, it's not as good as buying 2 recipes from the advanced shop. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and looked at Rose Queen. He said, I need to know how many powerhouses there are in the palace you used to live in, and what level they are at. Also, what's the level of Queen Ling Ping? The simplest way to help Rose Queen regain the throne was to solve everything with violence. Void Crossing Realm, 69. Lingi Realm, 1. Rose Queen told him the overall strength of the powerhouses in the palace, and finally said, as for that woman, she was only at the Void Crossing Realm when I fought with her back then. According to the level of the Falling Star Continent, the Void Crossing Realm was equivalent to Wu Sheng, and the Lingi Realm was equivalent to Wu Sheng's Great Perfection. Above that was the Return to Origin Realm, and the Return to Realm that could break the void. The old man who hit me was at the Lingi Realm? Jun Changshao asked. Yes. Jun Changshao fell into deep thought and said, let's exclude Queen Ling Ping first. As long as we deal with that old man, we should be able to regain the throne. Right. He asked, what's the status of the 9 Hall Masters that you mentioned earlier in the Soul Clan? They are second only to 1 and above all. Rose Queen said, they even have the right to decide the ownership of the throne. So powerful? Jun Changshao said in surprise. Rose Queen said, of course, the 9 Hall Masters must have the same opinion to have the right to make decisions. Any objection can't shake the supreme position of the Queen. In that case, Jun Changshao said, as long as we find the 9 of them, you can regain the throne without using force at all. No. Rose Queen said bitterly, when the 9 Hall Masters left the Soul Clan, Queen Lingping was still in power. The latter became the 3rd queen because the 9 of them recommended her. Even if they came, they wouldn't help me. To be honest, if the 9 Hall Masters hadn't attacked the Falling Star continent and never returned, this woman couldn't become the queen even if she could defeat Queen Lingping, because the 9 Hall Masters might not approve of her. Hey! Rose Queen said, why don't you speak? At this moment, Jun Changshao was sitting cross-legged and had entered the Tianyuan soul-suppressing pagoda. He was holding the soul-suppressing whip and pointing at the souls number 1 and number 2 in the corner, cursing, "You 2 bastards, you cheated me so badly." Slap! Slap! Ah, Jun Patriarch. We have been in the Falling Star continent for so long, but we didn't know that Queen Lingping had abdicated. Ah! Number 1 and number 2 were beaten until they cried like ghosts and howled like wolves. Number 3, who shrank in the distance, was trembling with fear. Rose Queen probably never dreamed that the 3 Hall Masters, who represented the strongest fighting force of the Soul Clan and had the right to dismiss the Queen, would fall into such a miserable situation. Area. After a while, Jun Changshao stopped angrily and said, how is the training of these 2 bastards going? Master, they have been trained. They won't dare to go to the east. Arya said. What about number 3? Jun Patriarch, I am willing to listen to you. The 5th Hall Master was quite manly when he came in, but after Arya's training, he finally understood why the 3rd Hall Master and the 4th Hall Master were so cowardly. Jun Changshao held the whip and said with cold eyes, today, I will give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. Whoever performs well will not be tortured again. Plop! The 5th Hall Master ran over and knelt directly on the ground, saying loudly, for Jun Patriarch, I am willing to go through fire and water and die 1,000 times. The 3rd Hall Master and the 4th Hall Master almost vomited blood. If we hadn't been whipped just now, you wouldn't have taken the initiative. You 3. Jun Changshao said lightly, go out with me. Yes. Chapter 1125. In the outside world. When Jun Changshao was training the 1st and 2nd souls, Rose Queen noticed that he was motionless. She quietly approached him and gently reached out to touch him. Smack! Go Sheng came back to his senses and grabbed her wrist. He said coldly, what are you doing? Rose Queen said with a pained expression, you're hurting me. Jun Changshao let go with a cold face. Rose Queen returned to her original position resentfully. While rubbing her wrist, she whispered, I just want to confirm if you're wearing a wig. Why are you so fierce? Jun Changshao pulled at his own hair and said, this is real hair. Open your eyes wide and look at it clearly. Also, do you have a weakness for baldness? Really? A look of disappointment appeared on Queen Rose's face. Jun Changshao said, I've brought you 3 of my kind. My kind? Rose Queen was confused. Swish! 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 At this moment, the space trembled slightly. 3 balls of natural green attributes appeared out of thin air and gradually condensed into solid bodies. They were the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Palace Masters. Because of their supernatural powers, they used the green devouring power to mix in the Falling Star continent. Now that they had returned to their homeland, they naturally condensed their real bodies. Don't say. The 3 of them were middle-aged men over 1.8 meters tall. They looked cold and dignified. At first glance, one could tell that they had been in power for a long time and had extremely high status and power. Rose Queen was so shocked that she couldn't speak. When the 9 Palace Masters went to the Falling Star continent, she wasn't born yet. However, after becoming the queen, she went to the ancient palace and saw the 9 portraits hanging in the main hall. "Girl," the third palace master said lightly, "who are you?" He and the other 2 palace masters had already noticed that Rose Queen was their kind. The noble aura she exuded was abnormally strong. She was completely different from the grandson she was in the Heaven Origin Soul Suppressing Tower. "She's Rose Queen," Jun Changshao introduced, "the 4th generation of your soul race." "Humph." The 5th palace master sneered and said, "Without the consent of the 9 palace masters, even the 5th and 6th generations are not recognized." So, with a wave of his hand, Jun Changshao pressed him to the ground and said, "I have released the 3 of you today so that you can agree. If anyone dares to object, you will receive even more cruel torture." Boom! Boom! The 5th palace master's head hit the ground hard, creating a crater. "Agreed! Agreed!" The 3rd palace master and the 4th palace master hastily expressed their stance. Their souls had been completely purified by Arya. Even if they had gathered into human form, they still could not escape her control, so they naturally did not dare to disobey. Jun Changshao lifted the swollen head of the 5th hall master and asked, "What about you?" I agree." Rose Queen opened her mouth. They were the 3 hall masters of the ancient palace. Even when Empress Ling Ping was in power, she had to be polite to them. But now they were obedient servants in front of Jun Changshao. "It's done." Jun Changshao let go of the 5th palace master and said, "With the 3 of them going to Empress City, you can become the 4th palace master legitimately." Rose Queen gradually calmed down and said, "Although the 3 of them look like hall masters, they don't have strong cultivation. It's easy to think that they are imposters." "That's true." Jun Changshao looked at the 3 souls and said, "Now that you have returned to the continent of the Soul Clan as you wish, how can you recover your cultivation in the fastest time? The bloodline pool in the ancient palace can help us recover quickly." Although the 3 hall masters had found hosts, they were condensing their physical bodies in their own territory. If they wanted to reach the strongest state, they could only go to the bloodline pool in the palace. No wonder the 3rd hall master and the 4th hall master would instigate Dai Lu and Fong Lingyu to break the seal in the northern desert state. "Let's go." Jun Changshao snapped his fingers and said, "Go to the ancient palace." "That," Rose Queen said awkwardly, "the ancient palace has been sealed by all kinds of tactical arrays." The 9 hall masters invaded the falling star continent and were beaten into a deep sleep by the ancient martial emperor. She was worried that they would suddenly return one day and deny her position as the empress, so she completely sealed the palace. She ordered her subordinates to open the space-time tunnel. Although she also planned to invade, her real purpose was to find the sleeping 9 hall masters and kill them when they were weak to prevent future troubles. Jun Changshao asked, "Can't we get in?" Rose Queen shook her head and said, "There are countless tactical arrays in the palace. If we break them by force, we will definitely alarm Empress Ling Ping and Tua Ling," the 3rd hall master said. "Without the bloodline pool, it's hard for us to recover to our peak state." "It's okay," Jun Changshao said indifferently, "it's just a tactical array. I can break as many as there are." Rose Queen frowned and said, "It took hundreds of tactical array masters decades to set it up. If we break it, we will be discovered if there is a slight mistake." When she was speaking, Jun Changshao had already picked her up and said, "Ugly woman, remember, we have joined hands now. You have to trust me at all times and don't question me." Jun Changshao. Rose Queen gnashed her teeth and said, "Don't say I'm ugly again. Ugly woman, ugly woman. You." Whoosh! Jun Changshao flew up and covered the 3 hall masters who had not recovered with his spiritual power. Then he rushed to the ancient palace. "Ugly woman, Yaya, can you not turn on the light?" The out-of-tune singing sounded in the sky. The 3 hall masters felt their blood boiling and their faces darkened. Queen Rose was so angry that she couldn't care less. She opened her mouth and bit down on Jun Changshao's shoulder. 100 miles away from Empress City, there was an ancient building in the depths of the jungle. Because no one cared about it for a long time, it had been occupied by vines and moss. It was like wearing a ghillie suit and integrating with the surrounding environment. Swish! Jun Changshao flew to the outermost periphery. Sure enough, there are many tactical arrays similar to seals here. He just used his spiritual thoughts and found that there were at least dozens of tactical arrays outside the ancient palace. Judging from the pneuma, they seemed to be of high level. Get out of the way. I'll break it. Jun Changshao said. Rose Queen reminded him, these tactical arrays are related to Empress City. Once they are discovered, Empress Ling Ping will definitely send people to kill us immediately. Discovered? Jun Changshao shook his head and said, no, they don't exist. What an arrogant guy. Rose Queen rolled her eyes at him, and then followed the 3 hall masters to retreat. Swish! Jun Changshao sat down with his legs crossed. His spiritual thoughts, which were almost substantial, were divided into several strands and rushed to the tactical array barrier in the nothingness. This guy. Rose Queen covered her forehead and said, can't we do it one by one? One by one. That would be too troublesome. Swish! At this time, Jun Changshao's spiritual thoughts had been integrated into the nearby tactical array, and then he quickly read the intricate tactical arrays and lines arranged inside. In the sea of consciousness, a picture similar to a 3D projection was instantly outlined. Rose Queen secretly said, does he know tactical arrays? Buzz! At this time, the tactical array in the nothingness appeared. Rose Queen's face changed slightly, and she said, it's troublesome. We've been discovered. Just as he was worrying, the visible formation dissipated like clouds and mist. He was instantly dumbfounded. Alas! Jun Changshao shook his head and said, it's too easy. Rose Queen's eyes were wide open. Obviously, she couldn't believe that the tactical array she ordered so many tactical array masters to arrange was broken by him in a few breaths. Swish! Swish! Several tactical arrays appeared and then gradually disappeared. An hour later, the 50 or so formations around the ancient palace had all been broken. Jun Changshao stood up and clapped his hands, and said, you 3 can go in. Rose Queen, the 3 hall masters, this guy not only knew tactical arrays, but also was very terrifying. Chapter 1126. The inside of the ancient palace was clean, due to the sealing of the array formation. 9 chairs made of special materials were placed in the main hall, and 9 portraits hung on the wall behind. The portraits were of the 9 palace masters. At this moment, 3 of them were nourishing their bloodline in the bloodline pool, slowly recovering their strength. Jun Changshao sat on the seat where the palace master used to sit. He crossed his legs, interlocked his fingers, and merged his soul into the heaven origin soul suppressing pagoda. He asked, are you sure you can have absolute control over their cultivation after they recover? Arya said confidently, as long as a soul has been trained by me, even if it ascends to the upper realm and has stronger strength, it will have to listen to Master and me. That's good. Jun Changshao completely relaxed, and then said to himself with great expectation, the 3 palace masters recovering their cultivation, isn't that the same as having 3 super bodyguards? The system said, if the host had done this from the beginning, he could have saved the talisman of opening the seal and the talisman of heaven and earth. As the strongest fighting force in the soul race continent, and with noble identities, wouldn't Rose Queen be easily defeated if 3 of them came down? Wouldn't the whole world be under her control? Jun Changshao clutched his chest and said, my heart hurts, it hurts. Of course. The system comforted, the host met Rose Queen as soon as he came in. Even if he came here, he wouldn't have a chance. That makes sense. Jun Changshao looked at Rose Queen sitting on the second seat and said in a commanding tone, hurry up and pour me a cup of tea. Rose Queen stared and said, are you treating me as a maid? Jun Changshao turned sideways and said, you are the queen of the soul race continent, and I am a guest. As the host, shouldn't you do the honors of a host? You are obviously a thief who snuck in. Rose Queen said, besides, there is no one here. Where can I find water to make tea for you? How about this? Jun Changshao leaned on the chair and said, come massage my back and shoulders. Rose Queen's beautiful eyes turned cold. If she wasn't seriously injured and lost all her cultivation, she would have slapped him and gave him the most refreshing massage. The three palace masters were recuperating in the bloodline pool. It would take some time for them to completely recover from their weakened state. Jun Changshao wasn't in a hurry. Because the two side quests didn't have a time limit, he temporarily stayed in the ancient palace. When he had nothing to do, he would look at the scenery and tease the Rose Queen. Creak. 5 days later, the tightly shut door of the bloodline hall was pushed open. Waves of majestic air rushed out from the inside, blowing away the leaves that were scattered all over the courtyard. With the background music blaring, the three hall masters walked out in an imposing and domineering manner. The thick aura around them did not pale in comparison to the Rose Queen, who was at full strength. In fact, it was even stronger. Hoo-hoo! The moment they walked out, the entire ancient palace began to tremble slightly, as if it was welcoming the return of its master. Queen Rose, who was sitting on the stairs of the palace, sensed something. She looked in the direction of the bloodline hall and frowned. The strongest combatant of the soul race has returned. Jun Changshao walked out and said, he doesn't seem to be much stronger than you. Queen Rose said, if they hadn't been sleeping in the falling star continent for tens of thousands of years, they would have already begun to spy on the return realm. Although the three palace masters' cultivation had recovered, they were still at the return realm. If they had succeeded in invading the falling star continent back then and obtained more martial arts knowledge and resources, they would have soared into the sky by now. However, they would never have thought that the martial emperors of the ancient times of the falling star continent also had extremely strong combat strength. Even if he and the other palace masters took action and even used their divine powers to trigger a war between the martial emperors, they still couldn't take them down. Instead, they ended up sleeping for tens of thousands of years. To be honest, from the final result, the 9 palace masters had won the expedition to the falling star continent. Because not only did they end the ancient era, but they also caused the fall of all the martial emperors. Since then, the continent had been torn apart, and the spiritual energy had withered. If there were no uncertainties, if they woke up from their deep sleep and repeated the same trick, occupying the entire continent would not be a problem. Unfortunately, Jun Changshao was this uncertain factor. His transmigration and arrival not only reversed the outcome of the second disaster of the falling star continent, but also turned the culprit into a lamb. He even fought back to the territory of the soul race continent and ruthlessly tortured the fourth empress. Ta! In front of the main hall, the third palace master was the first to stop. The fourth palace master and the fifth palace master followed. The three of them stood in a row, and the aura they emitted could be said to be quite powerful. However, 3 of the 9 people who represented the strongest combat strength of the soul race continent were exceptionally obedient and cautious when facing Jun Changshao. Shua! The 3 of them cupped their hands and said, Jun Patriarch, we have recovered our cultivation. Jun Changshao, who was sitting at the top of the stairs, placed his hands on his thighs and clasped his fingers together. His eyes were cold and stern as he said, kneel down and call me master. Plop! 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 The 3 palace masters bent their noble knees and shouted, Greetings, master. Rose Empress was silent. The 3 palace masters who had the power to shake the empress were actually bowing down to a martial artist of the falling star continent. Jun Changshao leaned back slightly, looked up at the sky, and said, to protect our homeland in the ancient times, thousands of ancestors who died in the War of the Emperors, if your souls are still. He shouted loudly, please clap for me, please be proud of me. The clouds in the sky seemed to transform into human figures, as if they had turned into the Great Desolation Martial Emperor, the 5 Elements Martial Emperor. These ancestors who had once resisted the invasion of foreign races and protected their homeland smiled at the man sitting on the stairs. Today, they had their revenge for the humiliation of 10,000 years. If the ancestors' souls were still here, they would be very gratified. Shua! Jun Changshao stood up and waved one hand. The true yang cloak that represented the flourishing flower family's color rustled as he said with great pride, "All of you, follow me to Empress City." Yes. The three super bodyguards followed closely behind. Looking at the extraordinary and imposing back, Rose Empress muttered, "Sometimes, this guy is actually quite manly." Empress City. The coronation ceremony had ended, but the city was still decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and it was very lively. No matter who the Empress of the Soul Clan was, it didn't matter to the ordinary people, so they still lived as usual. Occasionally, they would secretly discuss why the former Empress eloped with someone. "This Yi Xingqian is so bold that he dared to elope with our former Empress. There are wanted portraits of him in all the major cities. He can't avoid being caught even if he escapes to the ends of the earth." Yi Xingqian, who was cultivating in the sect of all times, would never have thought that he would elope with the Empress while he was sitting at home. In the main hall of the Imperial Palace, Tuoling cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, I have mobilized the entire Soul Clan's forces to search for Yi Xingqian and Rose of Flowers. There will be news soon." "Okay." Empress Ling Ping, who had regained the throne, nodded and said, "All the regulations set by that woman, as well as the 10 major cities that are focused on cultivation, are abolished immediately." This. Tuoling frowned and said, "Your Majesty, after thousands of years of development, the overall strength of the 10 major cities is extremely strong. I'm afraid it's inappropriate to abolish them." "There's nothing inappropriate," Empress Ling Ping said lightly. "Yes." Tuoling was just a subordinate, and he had to obey the Empress's orders. "What's the situation in the Falling Star continent now?" Empress Ling Ping asked again. "Your Majesty," a Soul Clan expert replied, "the space-time tunnel leading to the Falling Star continent is sealed. We can't enter." Empress Ling Ping said in surprise, "How can the tunnel opened by the space-time worm be sealed?" "Your Majesty," Tuoling said, "do you still have the space-time worm that you used back then?" "Yes, it is." Empress Ling Ping waved her hand and took out a creature similar to a caterpillar. She shook her head and said, "Unfortunately, after opening the space-time tunnel 10,000 years ago, it has been in a deep sleep. Otherwise, occupying the Falling Star continent would be light but—" "Excuse me." At this moment, a voice came from outside the palace. Swish! Jun Changshao, who was wearing the Xinjiang suit, strode in. He pointed proudly at Empress Ling Ping and said sternly, "Rebels and traitors, plotting to usurp the throne. I, Yi Xingqian, am here today to clean up the Emperor's side. P.S. July 1st, Monday, please recommend me, please vote me." Chapter 1127. When Jun Changshao appeared in the palace, Empress Ling Ping, Tuoling and others were all stunned. How did he get in? How did he get in so silently? Were the masters lurking in the Forbidden Palace and the generals and soldiers guarding day and night all blind? Plop! Plop! At this moment, several warriors of the Soul Clan in the Void Crossing realm flew in and then lay in front of Jun Changshao with serious injuries. Empress Ling Ping and Tuoling released their spiritual thoughts and found that there were people lying on the ground outside. It turned out that they were directly pushed to the high ground by others. Thud, thud, thud. The three masters in black clothes and masks walked in and stood behind Jun Changshao. They were the most professional and powerful bodyguards. Ling Ping. Empress Rose walked in and said, "Your era ended thousands of years ago." Empress Ling Ping said angrily, "My era was taken by you." Empress Rose looked at Tuoling and said coldly, "Since the first empress succeeded the throne, she issued a decree that only the capable could take the throne. What's wrong with me defeating her fair and square? She used to be the guard of Empress Ling Ping. Later, her status and strength improved. She launched a battle for the throne according to the rules of the Soul Clan and finally won. She was recognized by the civil and military officials and became the fourth empress. The procedure was right. What was wrong?" Humph. Tualing said lightly, although you defeated the Empress, the 9 masters are not here. You didn't get their recognition, so you are not qualified to inherit the throne. This was the reason that the 9th master was not here to deny the authority of Empress Rose. Empress Rose laughed. She got the Soul Clan with her strength. She had been conscientious for thousands of years to make the clan stronger. Just because she didn't get the recognition of the ancient hall, she denied all her efforts. Ridiculous. It was really ridiculous. She just lacks the legal procedure to inherit the throne. Jun Changshao, who had been silent, snapped his fingers and said, "Today, I will give you a legal procedure." The 3 masters behind him took off their masks and showed their original appearances. Empress Ling Ping saw it and immediately said happily, "3 masters, when did you come back?" However, her smile soon froze because the 3 of them stood in front of Empress Rose. Didn't it mean that they were against her? Tualing's face also turned ugly. Ling Ping. The 3rd palace master said, "We already know what happened. According to the rules left behind by the 1st empress, since you lost, you should have accepted your loss and given the throne to her. You shouldn't have held a grudge and tried to usurp the throne." Over the years, under Queen Rose's rule, the Soul Clan's overall strength has been increasing day by day. Even if you don't have the approval of the 9 of us, having the approval of everyone is enough, the 4th palace master said calmly. "You," Empress Ling Ping said ferociously, "do you want to support her?" The 9 palace masters had once pushed her to the position of empress, and now they were going to push her down again. How painful was that? Humph, Tualing was still able to maintain his calm. He said, "Your Majesty, the 9 palace masters were trapped in the falling star continent. How could they suddenly appear here? In my humble opinion, these 3 must be imposters." Shwa! The 5th hallmaster raised his hand, and terrifying energy gathered into a handprint, grabbing his opponent before him. "If I remember correctly, you should be called Tualing. When this hallmaster went to the Spiritus continent, you were still a small guard in the Imperial Palace, right?" Tualing's eyes were filled with shock. He was a Spirit Union realm expert, but in front of this guy, he was like an ant. The return to original realm. This was definitely the return to original realm. In other words, these 3 people were really the hallmasters of the ancient palace. Thinking of the torture he suffered in the Tianyuan soul-suppressing tower, the 5th hallmaster was furious. He grabbed Tualing's head and slammed it on the ground. He roared, "When I was in charge of the palace, you were still wearing diapers. How dare you be so presumptuous?" Boom! Boom! After a few bombardments, this Spirit Union realm expert suddenly turned into a pile of mud. Plop! Empress Ling Ping collapsed on the throne that she had always dreamed of. Tualing was her helper to regain the throne, but now he was easily trampled by the 5th hallmaster. She was afraid that she would be forced to abdicate again. "You!" Jun Changshao raised his hand and pointed over. He said, "Don't sit there." Helping Empress Rose regain the throne that she had lost was a super elite task. But with the help of the 3 hallmasters, it became easier than the simple mode. It didn't matter how strong Empress Ling Ping was, because no matter how strong she was, she couldn't be stronger than the 3 hallmasters. So after Tualing fell, she was forced to leave the throne that she had just sat on for a few days. Swish! Empress Rose put on the royal robe that represented supreme majesty again and sat on the throne like Dongfang Bubi. "Greetings, Empress." In the hall, civil and military officials knelt down together. This group of fence-sitters submitted to Empress Rose after Empress Ling Ping lost power. If it weren't for the fact that she needed a large number of people to stabilize the situation when she regained the throne, Empress Rose would have killed them or locked them up. Dark clouds covered the Empress city. An old man stood in front of the window and sighed. The weather has changed again. Swish! Swish! On the street, a large number of soldiers appeared at the main street entrance and then posted a notice that Empress Rose had regained the throne. In just a few days, the throne of the Soul Clan changed hands again and again, which confused the people. I heard that the Empress, who was abducted by Yixingchen, got the help of a warrior named Jun Changshao and regained the throne from Empress Ling Ping. What about Yixingchen? Needless to say, he must have been killed. When the notice was posted all over the Soul clan, the warriors were all talking about Empress Rose regaining the throne, and the names of Jun Changshao and Yixingchen became a hot topic. In a word, Anyo took the blame for abducting the Empress. Jun Changshao got the honor of saving the Empress and helping her regain the throne. This would definitely be recorded in history, and the two names would also be widely mentioned and discussed by future generations in the future. The children all encouraged themselves to be loyal and courageous Jun Changshao and not the heartless Yixingchen. They even formed a unique culture in language. For example, you are Yixingchen and your whole family are Yixingchen. Alas! The system sighed. I have never seen a patriarch who cheats his disciples like this. Jun Changshao, who was sitting on the top of the palace, was puzzled. That woman regained the throne, but why hasn't the side task been completed? The system said, the second side task is related to the first side task, and the first side task should also be related to the second side task, so I guess that the host must complete it at the same time. The corner of Jun Changshao's mouth twitched, and then he jumped down and entered the bedroom with a big bed. He looked at Rose Empress, who was engrossed in her work, and said indifferently, I helped you regain everything you lost, so you must give me the same position as you. Rose Empress raised her head and said with a charming smile, the only equivalent position is the regent. Do you want me to marry you, or do you want to marry me? Please. Jun Changshao roared, isn't it a man marrying a woman and a woman marrying a man? The meaning is the same. What the hell is the same? Rose Empress put down the booklet in her hand and leaned lazily on the table. She held her face with her hands, blinked, and said with a smile, if you are the regent, I can consider marrying you. This seductive blink was simply too charming. Come on. Jun Changshao sat on the chair next to her and said snappily, give me a new position equal to the Empress, such as the Great State Preceptor, Great Protector, and so on. No. Rose Empress said, only the regent can marry me. I've already decided. Rose Empress said, announce to the world tomorrow that you and I will choose a day to hold our wedding. Jun Changshao said with a cold face, sorry, I won't marry you. The system said, the host can play with her first, and after the side task is completed and you get the reward, you can leave. Fuck. Jun Changshao roared, this is too melodramatic. The system said, those who achieve great things don't care about trifles. Besides, if you marry this woman, won't the martial arts resources of the entire Soul race continent be at your fingertips? Jun Changshao fell into deep thought, then looked at you in the camera and said, what should I do? Waiting online, it's urgent. Chapter 1128. Queen Rose wanted Jun Changshao to be the regent, not because of personal feelings, but because of political reasons. Such a strong man who made the three palace masters bow down to him, if he could become her husband, there would only be benefits and no harm. Queen Rose had great ambitions. She hoped to make the Spiritas continent stronger. It was impossible to rely on the martial arts resources of her own plane alone. Only by conquering other planes could she achieve great feats. If Jun Changshao helped her, so what if she married him? When Queen Rose lost everything, she showed the appearance of a weak woman, but after sitting on the throne, when the high and mighty aura returned, she valued the hegemony of 1,000 years more. Feelings between a man and a woman? Compared to her dreams, it was very small. Why did she say that she was very similar to Jun Changshao? Because the latter did not consider feelings. He only hoped to develop the sect of all times to the strongest. This was the goal that he had been working hard to and had never changed after obtaining the system. Do I really have to marry you to have the same status? Jun Changshao looked at her. Queen Rose flicked her black hair and smiled. Not only do you have the same status, but you also have all kinds of martial arts resources. Of course. She gently tilted her shoulder, and her clothes slipped down. You can have me now. Her frown and smile were very enchanting. Do you think of yourself as a fickle woman? Or do you think of me as a lecher? Jun Changshao said with a straight face. Swish! He stood up and said with his back to her, I'll give you 1 day to grant me the same rights as you, otherwise, the world will change again. After saying this, he walked out of the bedroom. Jun Changshao. Queen Rose called out to him, clenching her fists and gritting her teeth. I, Rose of Flowers, have always been clean. What right do you have to say that I'm fickle? 1 day. Jun Changshao left without looking back, and he even wiped the blood from his nose. Queen Rose was so angry that she pushed all the memorials out and said, Damn you. If my cultivation was still here, I would definitely tear you into pieces. Sob, sob, sob. The queen who had controlled the soul race for thousands of years was actually crying because of Jun Changshao. The next day, the Empress City, which had just calmed down, was once again decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and firecrackers were set off. The reason was that the Empress was about to get married. In the magnificent palace, Jun Changshao sat in front of the dressing table and looked at the neatly arranged bridegroom's clothes. He bitterly said, I still compromised. He could ask the Rose Queen to give him a new position, such as the High Priest or the Great Guardian. But, did the system mission recognize it? He had no choice. In order to complete the 2 super elite missions and obtain more rewards, he could only agree to the conditions given by the mission and agree to marry the Rose Queen and become the regent. The system said, Host, it's not too late to leave now. 2 side quests, how could I bear to part with them? Looking at his own reflection in the mirror, Jun Changshao shook his head helplessly and said, Jun Changshao, you've fallen. The system was speechless. Not to mention the status of the Rose Queen, just her peerless beauty would be a huge gain for him if he married her. It made him feel as if he had suffered a great grievance. Creak. The door was gently pushed open. Young Master Jun, a few maids walked in and bowed. The wedding time is approaching. We have been ordered to help you put on your wedding clothes. No need. Jun Changshao said, I can do it myself. Therefore, the bronze mirror showed the image of him wearing a bright red wedding dress. Then, he leaned over and examined himself, muttering to himself, Do I look like Joker now? Host, are you marrying Fairy Zixia or Bai Jingjing? The system asked. Creak. Jun Changshao opened the door and stepped out. Only primary school students do multiple choice questions. I definitely won't marry anyone, because I'm not Joker. I'm me, a different kind of fireworks. Because the Rose Queen's wedding came too suddenly, there were only some civil and military officials in the palace at the wedding site. There were no city lords of the major cities. Of course. The news of the Rose Queen's wedding had been arranged last night. It wouldn't be long before the entire Soul Race continent knew about this matter and that Jun Changshao had become the regent. In the throne room. In front of the Queen's throne, there was an extremely high standard seat prepared for the regent. This kind of imperial wedding ceremony did not need a witness, nor did it need the high status of both the man and the woman to witness it. Shwa! Jun Changshao walked into the throne room first, then sat on it and crossed his legs casually. He did not look like a groom at all, but like an unruly monkey. The queen has arrived. At this moment, a guard shouted loudly. Jun Changshao raised his head and saw the Rose Empress walk into the main hall with the help of her maidservants. Her bright red wedding dress dragged on the floor for a very long time. Rose petals slowly fell from the sky, decorating the palace quite romantic. It was said that a woman's most beautiful day in her life was on her wedding day. This was true. The Rose Queen, who was already a beauty, was really charming and beautiful at this moment. Jun Changshao thought, she's quite beautiful. The system said, so, it's a loss, it's a grievance. Greetings, Your Majesty. When the Rose Queen walked into the palace, the 2 rows of civil and military officials knelt down one after another. Shwa! Coming to the front of the seats, she raised her hands and said, "Everyone, please rise." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The civil and military officials stood up. Because of their previous mistakes, they did not dare to raise their heads. "Young Master June is a dragon among men, Your Majesty is a phoenix among men. Today's marriage will be a beautiful story for all eternity." The third palace master, who was standing at the front of the court, said loudly. The fourth palace master and the fifth palace master cursed in their hearts, "Let this guy beat us to it." The Rose Queen said, "From today onwards, Jun Changshao is my husband, and he is specially conferred the title of regent. If you have any important matters in the future, you can discuss it with him." Plop! The civil and military officials knelt down again and shouted, "Greetings, Your Majesty." The feeling of being knelt down really made Jun Changshao feel a little smug. "Bring the wine," the Rose Queen said. Schwa! A maid came up with 2 cups of wine. The Rose Queen picked up the wine cup and said, "After drinking this cup of wine, you and I will be husband and wife." Jun Changshao's face changed again and again, and he sent a sound transmission, "Didn't we agree to play around? Why are we still drinking wine with each other?" The Rose Queen said in a low voice, "This is a necessary procedure for marriage." "Sorry." Jun Changshao refused, "I can't hold my liquor." Ding! Side quest 1 completed, the host has received 50,000 contribution points. Ding! Contribution points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest and triggering the hidden reward. You have received the highest grade array qualification Liquid X1, Experience Talisman X10. Ding! Side quest 2 completed, the host has received 50,000 contribution points. Ding! Contribution points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest and triggering the hidden reward. You have received the Hard to Keep Blade Transformation Spirit Stone X1, Experience Talisman X10. When the prompt sounded in his ears, especially when he heard about the Hard to Keep Blade Transformation Spirit Stone, Jun Changshao almost jumped up from his seat in excitement. This thing. It was a good thing. I'm rich, I'm rich. Ha ha ha. Jun Changshao laughed out loud, and then, unable to suppress his emotions, he directly picked up the wine and said boldly, "Come, cheers." Gulp. After drinking a cup of cold wine, it was difficult to cool down the hot blood in his heart. The Rose Queen was stunned. "Didn't you say you don't drink?" Jun Changshao said seriously, "At this moment, it's hard to find a confidant." Chapter 1129. After the maid served the wine, Jun Changshao successfully completed the 2 side quests. Because he had helped the Rose Empress regain the throne, he had also become the regent. Judging from the completion of the 3 quests, the super elite quests would have a fixed reward of 10 experience talismans. It was simply a rhythm of 1 level reward after completing one. Of course. What made Jun Changshao most excited was the modification Spirit Stone. With this item, it meant that he could modify the Hard to Keep sword again and have a stronger form. As his level increased, the enemies he faced would become stronger. If his biggest trump card was upgraded in time, it would definitely be beneficial for him to show off in the future. Comfortable. Jun Changshao was so excited that he couldn't help but drink the wedding wine and said loudly, "Is there any more? Give me another cup." If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to be shameless, he might have jumped down and twisted his butt to do a seaweed dance. Rose Empress, is my husband's brain not normal? The civil and military officials, has our king's brain been kicked by a donkey? No one knew how happy Jun Changshao was, but since he wanted to drink, he would definitely be satisfied. Thus, 1 jar of wine after another was served. "Empress, the king has drunk too much." Looking at the drunk Jun Changshao on the ground, Rose Empress was so angry that she almost ignored her status and kicked him twice. Today was their wedding ceremony, and there were so many civil and military officials present. Yet, he was so drunk that he couldn't even stand up. It was simply too embarrassing. She also knew that this marriage was just a show, but at least it was more realistic. What was the result? He kept drinking throughout the whole process. How could he not be good at drinking? He was simply an alcoholic. Rose Empress said with a cold face, "Carry him back to the palace." Yes. Several guards lifted Jun Changshao up. The Empress' wedding ended, and the civil and military officials retreated. However, every time they talked about the regent Jun Changshao on the way, they always felt that they couldn't see through him. Everyone. A minister said solemnly, he helped the Empress regain the throne and won the Empress's heart. This man is not simple. We must serve him carefully to avoid any mistakes. Everyone nodded. Night came. Candlelight flickered in the bedroom. Jun Changshao, who rarely got drunk, was now drunk to the point of unconsciousness. He was lying on the soft bed, sleeping like a dead pig. Rose Queen had already changed into her nightgown. She sat in front of the table and reviewed the memorials. Occasionally, she would look at the snoring man and shake her head. Don't drink if you can't. The next day, Jun Changshao opened his eyes and held his head with one hand. He had a splitting headache and said, "Damn it. I drank too much." Luckily, he didn't have Yi Xingqian's bad habits. Otherwise, he would be in the livestock pen now. Schwa! After recovering slightly, Jun Changshao found that not only was his upper body naked, but he was also sleeping on the big bed of the Rose Queen. He held his head and broke down. Did I do something wrong? System. Ding. System rebooting, loading 10%. 100%. Jun Changshao broke down and said, "Why the fuck did you turn it off again?" The system, which had just been activated, smiled meaningfully and said, "Every minute of the night is worth 1,000 gold. Naturally, I can't disturb the host." Really? Humanizing. However, this made Jun Changshao break down even more. He howled in his heart. I really did something I shouldn't have done. If this kind of thing was really unavoidable, he wouldn't blame himself too much. But, the most terrible thing was that he didn't know anything after getting drunk. Ha! The system was surprised. Why is your wife sleeping in front of the desk? Jun Changshao hurriedly turned his head and saw Rose Queen sleeping on the desk. Her hair was casually scattered on the memorials that had already been approved. Phew! Jun Changshao breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the situation, nothing should have happened last night. He gently got out of bed and then took his shirt and boots that were stained with the smell of alcohol. He walked step by step out of the bedroom like a thief. Creak. He gently opened the door and quietly went out. However, when he looked back at the woman, he couldn't bear to see her like this. With a thought, he covered her with the blanket on the bed. After Jun Changshao left, Rose Queen lazily opened her eyes and found that there was an extra thing on her body. She couldn't help but smile. My husband actually has a gentle side. Your Majesty. Your Majesty. Well, when Jun Changshao came out of the bedroom, the guards and maids of the imperial palace knelt all the way along the way. He felt very embarrassed. Your Majesty. This is an important place. You can't. Jun Changshao stopped in front of the dungeon and said with a cold face, "Go away." Yes. The dungeon general hurriedly retreated. Jun Changshao walked in and stopped in front of the cell where Ling Ping Empress was held. Rose Queen had to deal with a lot of things. She hadn't thought about how to deal with the third Empress for the time being. So, she could only lock her up here first. What are you doing here? Ling Ping Empress glared at Jun Changshao. If this man hadn't brought the 3 palace masters here, she wouldn't have been in such a situation. To be honest, if it hadn't been for Jun Changshao, she might not have been able to sit on the throne in her life, even for a few days. I can spare your life, but the premise is that you hand over the space-time worm. Jun Changshao said lightly. When he broke into the palace, he saw the space-time worm that Ling Ping Empress took out. It was a good thing. If he had another one, he would have another chance to go to other planes. Spare my life? Ling Ping Empress sneered and said, who do you think you are? Jun Changshao took out the token and said, Regent. Ling Ping Empress looked at it and seemed to understand something. She said with a smile, Rose of Flowers used her beauty to exchange for your assistance. Swish! She grabbed the iron bars and said crazily, as long as you can help me take back the throne, I can also serve you. Jun Changzhao's face crumbled. Do I look obscene and lecherous? It's good that you are alive now. As for the throne, don't think about it for the rest of your life. Jun Changshao said. Ling Ping Empress said unwillingly, my appearance is not worse than that woman's. I can also give you what she can give you. Jun Changshao waved his hand and controlled her. He forcibly took off the space ring from her finger. Ling Ping Empress had become a prisoner, so she naturally didn't care about the space ring. She grabbed the iron bars and said loudly, I can give you whatever you want. Come back. Come back. Jun Changshao walked to the door of the prison and shook his head, this woman is crazy. In the green area of the inner court of the Imperial Palace, Jun Changshao sat alone in the stone pavilion, and then easily broke the seal in the space ring. He took out the sleeping space-time worm and said, it can store living things. This ring is of a high level. Swish! He moved his mind. The space-time worm entered his space ring. That woman said that this guy has been sleeping for 10,000 years and hasn't woken up. Mine won't be 10,000 years, will it? Jun Changshao was a little depressed. If so, when could he return to the falling star continent? The system joked, you have done the important things in your life. Then you can wait. Maybe you can go back when you have children and grandchildren. Get out. Jun Changshao scolded. At this moment, the graceful Rose Empress walked over with the help of a maid. She smiled and said, husband, what are you thinking about? I am thinking about leaving. Going back to the falling star continent? Yes. I can help you go back. Oh? Jun Changshao had a suspicious look on his face. Rose Empress said, I have been fighting in various planes all these years. I didn't rely on the space-time worm. What did you rely on? Jun Changshao hurriedly asked. Rose Empress sat down lightly. The fragrance of roses came to his nose. She held her face and smiled, beg me and I will tell you. Jun Changshao clenched his fist and said indifferently, can I hit you? Pfft, Rose Empress covered her mouth and laughed. Then, she returned to the topic and said, I have cultivated a theurgy that allows me to travel through the universe at will. Jun Changshao said, are you trying to trick a 3-year-old child? There might be powerful beings in the world who could travel through the universe, but he didn't believe that a woman who couldn't even shatter the void could travel through the universe. If you don't believe me, then forget it. Rose Empress said, you can stay here forever. We will turn the act into reality. I have already thought of the children's names. The boy will be called Hua Wu Kei and the girl will be called Hua Qian, Pa. Jun Changshao slammed the table and stood up. He roared, don't the children follow their father's surname? Do they follow their mother's surname? Pay. We are just putting on a show. We will not turn the act into reality. Rose Empress looked at him resentfully and said, do you have a woman outside? Is that why you won't accept me? That's right. I am a womanizer by nature. I have many wives and concubines in the falling star continent. You have at least 3,600 wives. The system said, no one is convinced by this kind of bragging but the host. That's even better. Queen Rose blinked her eyes and said with a smile, if you heal me, I'll go to the falling star continent with you and meet my 3,599 sisters. Plop. Jun Changzhao's face was pressed against the stone table as he collapsed, she's sick. However, Gosheng understood that Rose Empress told him that she had a way to go to the falling star continent, but first, he had to heal her body. This woman had a lot of tricks. No wonder she was the 4th generation head. Chapter 1130. The three palace masters had been in a coma for thousands of years, and their injuries were basically healed. However, the injuries to their souls could only be healed in the bloodline pool. Rose Queen was different. Her injuries were very serious, and she could only rely on medical skills or time to slowly recuperate, and that would take at least a few years or even decades. Jun Changshao defeated her, and he must have paid a price. Why did he recover in a few days? Something was wrong. Because Rose Queen had guessed, she could only pin her hopes of quickly recovering from her injuries on him. Sorry. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I can't heal your injuries. He was not seriously injured in the fight with this woman because of the side effects of his trump card. He could rely on the space-time secret realm to heal it. Rose Queen was different. She was seriously injured, and to heal, she must rely on medical skills and pills. Jun Changshao was not good at these two aspects, and he did not have a more advanced healing pill, so he could not help. If Sun Bukong was here, there might be hope. After all, that guy had studied the medical skills left by the medical saint of all faces for several years. You know swordsmanship and formations? You don't know medical skills? Rose Queen looked at him. Jun Changshao said angrily, I'm not omnipotent. Rose Queen said, if you can't recover from your injuries, I can't use my skills, so you can only wait. I'll wait. Jun Changshao shrugged, as if he didn't care. He and Rose Queen were just putting on a show. After all, the two of them had nothing to do with each other, and he would not be restricted by her just because they were husband and wife. The system said, the host should spend the excess 100,000 contribution points as soon as possible. Yes, yes. Jun Changshao got up and said, I'm going to cultivate. Rose Queen watched him leave the stone pavilion, and her eyes were filled with resentment. Was she too weak? Even if she put on a show, she could not let him look her in the eye. Girl. You're very good. It's just that you met an unusual person. I thought I could keep him by my side after marriage. Rose Queen said bitterly, now it seems that I was thinking too much. She really hoped that Jun Changshao could stay and assist her. Unfortunately, the former only wanted to quietly develop the sect, and did not have the ambition to make contributions. The two of them were similar in some aspects, but their ideals were very different. One of them didn't have the system's restrictions and had long traveled the world, living a carefree life. The other was concerned about his race and didn't hesitate to go into battle, fighting all over the world. After becoming the regent, Jun Changshao had his own palace. The environment was not bad. There were mountains, rivers, and ponds. When he was free, he could also fish. At this time, he had no interest in fishing or bathing. He sat in his bedroom and opened the advanced shopping center. The reward of 100,000 contribution points for completing 2 missions was simply too generous. My fake marriage with that woman was not in vain. Jun Changshao began to carefully read through it. He spent a large sum of money to purchase all kinds of weapons, talismans, and pill formulas to support the sect in the future. The goods sold in high-tier shops were all extremely useful. The only downside was that they were expensive. The cheapest one was 10,000 contribution points, and there were even 20,000 contribution points. After purchasing the 2 weapon and equipment recipes, Jun Changshao discovered the recipe for the Insight Talisman. Take a look. The system said, am I right? As long as the host is brave enough to refresh the advanced shopping center, this thing can be bought easily. It's not the time to slap your face, Jun Changshao said in annoyance. Ding! The host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained the recipe for the Insight Talisman X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding! Sect contribution points, 1,400,007,000. As he hadn't mastered the Tianjun soul refining technique, Jun Changshao still bought the recipe for the Insight Talisman. Moreover, as his level increased, he would come into contact with more martial arts. If he wanted to continue acting cool in front of others, he would definitely need this thing. After purchasing the Insight Talisman, it was automatically matched to the Talisman Pavilion. The main ingredient was about 50 types of high-grade crystal cores, and the supplementary ingredient was a high-grade healing pill. Jun Changshao still couldn't understand. Talismans that could increase one's understanding of martial arts had nothing to do with healing pills. Why were they always used as ingredients? The system said, "This is the power of technology." Jun Changshao couldn't be bothered with it. Seeing that all the ingredients were available, he refined one first to test its effect. Refining the Insight Talisman required time, so he used this time to buy a few more supreme-grade weapons and equipment. With his current strength, as long as it wasn't divine grade or above, he wouldn't care at all. Even if he bought it, it would only be for his disciples. Therefore, he didn't bother to make up the names and effects. Okay. Seeing that his contribution points had returned to the full 70,000 value, Jun Changshao's compulsive heart calmed down. However, just as he was about to return to the shopping center, he found the recipe for the Insight Talisman. This is good stuff. Jun Changshao's eyes lit up. The effect of the high-grade healing pill was only limited to Wu Huang and Wu Sheng. If there was a higher-grade pill, it would be easier for him to go out and have fun after his cultivation level increased. He hurriedly clicked on the introduction, which made him feel depressed. That was because the healing effect of the Insight Talisman was also instantaneous, but it was only effective for Wu Sheng who had attained perfection. The high-grade healing pill was effective for Wu Huang, half-saint, and Wu Sheng, but this healing pill was only effective for one cultivation level. That was a little fucked up. Jun Changshao said, "I'll keep it for now." He spent 10,000 contribution points to buy the recipe for the Insight Talisman. When it was automatically matched to the pill pavilion, he clicked on the required ingredients and found that there were many ingredients listed on the data board. He hurriedly took it back and broke down. "This is too much." The system said, "Isn't it normal to have a lot of ingredients for a higher cultivation level healing pill?" Jun Changshao didn't say anything. He then took out the Insight Talisman from the space ring and said, "I haven't studied Formation Dao recently, so I'm getting further away from Martial Dao. I can use this to improve." The system was speechless. "You make it sound like you've studied Martial Dao before." He hadn't studied Martial Dao or Sword Dao before. He relied on goods, experience talismans, and missions to improve. So, am I arrogant? Am I arrogant? He was already despicable enough, and now he was imitating little Yaya's tone. That made him even more despicable. If not for the rules, the system would have probably come out and kicked him. Gulp. The Insight Talisman that was similar to the pure taste of the green bird was swallowed. Huff huff. After a wave of energy fluctuations, Jun Changshao's Formation Dao aptitude was greatly improved. Shwa! He raised both hands, holding 20 experience talismans between his fingers, and said, "So many experience talismans should be able to help me improve by 2 levels. Pa 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 pa." He crushed them like a tiger, and a majestic spirit energy gathered around him. Ding! Host has successfully broken through to 4th grade sword and martial saint. Ding! Host has successfully broken through to 5th grade sword and martial saint. As expected. Jun Changshao said with certainty, 10 experience talismans can improve by 1 level. Whether it was consuming the Insight Talisman or crushing the experience talisman, his emotions didn't change. He was used to it, so he was calm. He spent the contribution points. His Formation Dao aptitude increased. His realm also increased from 3rd grade to 5th grade. When everything was done, Jun Changshao carefully took out the Transformation Spirit Stone and said, "This is the highlight. That's my precious baby." Shwa! Soul Force emerged and was about to melt. The system reminded, once Host modifies the hard-to-keep blade, you will need a new opening talisman. Wouldn't the 2 space ring talismans be useless? Yes. Jun Changshao hurriedly retracted his soul force. The second form of the hard-to-keep blade, although it was already very difficult to deal with a powerhouse like Rose Queen, the weapon itself was still very strong, so there was no need to hurry to modify it. At least, he had to use the other 2 opening talismans. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.